to try switching to my correct computer. It's not working, but now it is.
Kenmore City Council is now in session. Pursuant to RCW 42.30.110(1)(I), the City Council will now enter into an executive session to discuss pending or potential litigation, and pursuant to RCW 110(1)(B) to consider the acquisition of real estate. Ms. Lukash, how long do we expect executive session to last?
I said about 30 minutes.
I'm sorry, what?
I think 30 minutes.
30 minutes, okay.
Yeah.
And we'll be back here at 7:30. I'll see everybody over in the executive session room.
Just like the mayor announced, the council has now moved into an executive session. They're hoping to discuss pending or potential litigation along with real estate acquisition, both authorized by the RCW cited. And they hope to conclude the executive session at 7:31 or so. Mayor Herbig, welcome back.
Thank you.
Are we extending or returning?
We are returning.
Okay. I have not seen Councilmember Kugler this evening.
She is going to be excused today.
Okay. Thanks.
Councilor Shrednick says that she's waiting to be let in.
Yes, I'm promoting her.
Okay.
There's just a lag sometimes.
Okay.
And we're going to go ahead and let our attorney in as well.
Have we seen Councilmember File?
I don't see her in the holding tank.
The holding tank.
Not yet, anyway.
Okay. I'll give her another minute. She says she's trying to connect.
Yeah, I don't see her yet. I just reissued the link and sent it straight to her one more time.
Okay.
But I don't see her yet.
Okay. Well, the Kenmore City Council is exiting executive session. We do have possible action related to the executive session. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the One Washington Memorandum of Understanding between Washington municipalities and authorize the city manager to sign said memorandum of understanding.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Certainly moved by Deputy Mayor O'Kane, seconded by Councilmember Baker. Mayor Herbig,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane,
Yes.
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes.
And I do see that Councilmember File is here. Mayor, would you mind repeating the motion so we can gather Ms. File's vote?
Yes, the motion was to approve the One Washington Memorandum of Understanding between Washington municipalities and authorize the city manager to sign said memorandum of understanding.
Councilmember File, what is your
Yes.
vote? Okay, the motion
Yes.
does pass.
All right. Next on the agenda is roll call. Madam Clerk,
Mayor Herbig,
here.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane,
Present.
Councilmember Marshall,
Present.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Here.
Councilmember File,
Present.
Councilmember Baker,
Here.
and Councilmember Kugler has been excused, correct?
Yes, correct. Okay, next on the agenda is the flag salute. If you'd all join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Councilmember Shrubnik. Next on the agenda is agenda approval. Unless I hear any objections to the agenda, it will stand approved as published. Seeing no objections, the agenda is approved as published. Next on the agenda is proclamations. We have one today for Earth Day. Whereas all people, regardless of race, gender, income, or geography, have a right to a healthy, sustainable environment with economic growth and opportunity. And whereas all species play a unique role in the complex web of life and contribute to the ecosystem services on which all life on Earth depends, and hence protecting our species is crucial to the survival of this planet and its inhabitants. And whereas wild animal populations have declined on average by more than half, and the Earth is facing an era of mass extinction, and whereas the loss of species is for the most part a result of human activity, including degradation of ecosystems, deforestation, pollution, and climate change. And whereas many plants, wild animals, and pollinators live in urbanized landscapes, and cities thereby have a responsibility to examine the ecological impacts of expanding urban areas and how to protect biodiversity. And whereas by 2050, between 60 and 70% of all people will live in cities, and species provide important services to city dwellers, such as generating oxygen and purifying the air, controlling other animals considered pests or that spread disease, pollinating plants and crops, and providing recreation activity opportunities and well-being. And whereas it is more important than ever to cooperate locally and internationally to defend the environmental progress that has been heretofore gained. And whereas it is essential to expand and diversify the global environmental movement to achieve maximum progress. And whereas Earth Day is an annual reminder of the constant need for environmental activism, stewardship, commitments, and sustainability efforts. Now, therefore, I, Nigel Herbig, Mayor of Kenmore, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim April 22nd, 2022 as Earth Day. We urge all residents to participate in programs and activities that will protect our environment and contribute to a healthy, sustainable future. And accepting the proclamation is Elizabeth Mooney, on behalf of People for an Environmentally Responsible Kenmore. Ms. Mooney.
Hello, good evening, council and staff and citizens. Thank you, Mayor Herbig. Hi, my name is Elizabeth Mooney, and I am standing in Kenmore next to Chet Shotgull, which is next to the Burke Gilman Trail. And this is, I'm president of PERK, People for Environmentally Responsible Kenmore, which is one of a number of grassroots volunteer groups that have been striving and still striving to protect and restore the natural environment here at the north end of Lake Washington. We would like to accept this proclamation on behalf of all the inhabitants who need and want a healthy Kenmore. So I came to the shore of Kenmore by Chetchathel, the small stream like so many others in need of stewardship. And I came to ask the stream for the wisdom about our future, how best to encourage us to work together, given the extraordinary threats due to climate change, urban growth, to protect clean air and water, bring back our salmon and kokanee. This is no small task, but will require the combined efforts of Kenmore, Lake Forest Park, Bothell, Briar, and other surrounding jurisdictions that share this watershed and ecosystem. So I hope, and we hope, that the city is ready to embrace the words of this proclamation. And one way everyone can help is to spread the word about the upcoming meeting, April 18th, 4 p.m., regarding the Kenmore asphalt plant on the shore of Lake Washington, beside the Burr-Gilman Trail. Puget Sound Clean Air Agency wants to hear everybody's comments and concerns, and we're ready to help the city spread the word to get clean air, clean water. So please, everybody, do something this Earth Day. We'll be at the Kenmore hangar to help people make comments and bring back kokanee to this small stream and work with the tribes and WashDOT and everybody else for a healthier Kenmore. Check out perkinkenmore.org. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mooney. Next on the agenda is public comments. We welcome our community members to the council's meeting. In this forum, the council does not engage or dialogue with the public. The primary role of the council is to listen. Please use the raise hand feature now if you wish to speak. Guests must address comments to the mayor and city council. The clerk will acknowledge your request and call your name when it is your turn.
See if
Your time will start when we confirm that we can hear you. Please state your name and city of residence for the record and keep your comments to the allotted time. We will not split your time with others or reset your time except by express approval of the presiding officer. Screen sharing is not allowed. You can submit materials to the council or clerk in advance. Please do not comment about pending development projects on which the council will make future decisions, as those are quasi-judicial matters, and council members must limit their communications about such matters. The meeting is being recorded. Thank you for taking the time to express your comments. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Herbig. We have a great group with us this evening. We'd like to take our guests in the following order. The first batch of guests, Raymond Pendergast, followed by Carl Michaelman, John Culver, Carrie Bergenstrom-Halls, Tracy Benashinsky, William Moran, and Patrick O'Brien. Mr. Pendergast, Raymond Pendergast, are you with us? Raymond Pendergast, you had your hand raised. Can you hear us? Looks like you're muted. Oh,
Can you hear me?
we can hear you.
Great. May I begin?
Yes, let me get the timer going. Go ahead.
My name is Raymond Pendergast. I live at 6232 Northeast 182nd Street here in Kenmore, across the street from the Christ the Redeemer Church. The temporary homeless shelter recently approved at the Church of Christ the Redeemer is in an extremely inappropriate location. It is in a residential area with a vulnerable population, including children from infants to young teens, single women, the elderly, and disabled adults. Property crimes such as thefts from vehicles, thefts of personal property, and vandalism are a very real threat. A recent University of Pennsylvania study concluded that the presence of a shelter appears to cause property crime to increase by 56% within 100 meters of that shelter. It is widely acknowledged that chronic public intoxication, loitering, panhandling, trespassing, shoplifting, drug dealing, and other criminal activity are typically associated with homeless shelters. Yes, the rules of the encampment prohibit these activities on site, But what control is there regarding these behaviors off-site? A KOMO article published on February 3rd of this year cited Seattle Police Crime Dashboard data regarding the conversion of the inn at Queen Anne from a hotel to a homeless shelter. In the year that followed the conversion, reported incidents of violent crime nearly doubled. A person interviewed for the Como article said, and I quote, "I had to beef up and be on high alert because I didn't know what's going on around here. Shelters should not be located near homes or businesses," unquote. There is no doubt that all of us that reside near the Church of Christ the Redeemer will have to be on high alert for the entire 125 days that the encampment is present in our neighborhood. This is not consistent with the Kenmore vision statement that sees Kenmore as a community that is attentive to and seeks to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of all its citizens. The safety and welfare of the residents near this shelter will be at risk. The vision statement also sees a community with an informed citizenry working with an open, responsive government that seeks out and integrates public input. Under the type 1 land use decision that is being used here, there is neither a requirement for a public hearing nor a public notice board. There is no requirement for public input to be solicited or heeded. Again, this is not consistent with the Kenmore vision statement. I fully support providing temporary shelter for the homeless, but it must be done in an appropriate location. This location is not in the best interest of the residents of Kenmore.
Thank you, Mr. Pendergast. Carl Michaelman?
Hey, can you hear me?
We can, go ahead.
Okay, this is Carl Michaelman. As Karina Faya would say, I'm a non-resident person who has property in Kenmore. What is happening now when you went ahead and decided you're going to put these rent controls in, they are very illegal. The state of Washington states that you can't put rent control in. Karina Faya said that the unincorporated King County has done it. And if I recall, when we became the city of Kenmore, we didn't want to be under King County's rules. You folks are going to bring us to a lawsuit. And what's going to happen is that we, as the taxpayers, are going to pay for this. I look at Karina Faya, and when I look at her, I see that she will get advantage to this because she lives in an apartment and does not pay property taxes like I do as a non-resident, quote unquote, Karina Faya stating. In regards to that of Karina Faya going ahead and stating I'm a non-resident, last week or 2 weeks ago, John Hendrickson went ahead and spoke, and Karina Faya sent him an email saying, as a business person as well as a non-resident. This is very concerning to me that we have a council person who is not detailed oriented and is also looking out for her benefit, not for other people's benefit. She goes ahead and she does. If we give all these landlord protections, guess what? Karina Faya gets that landlord protection. Karina Faya brings up the health insurance. Karina Faya looks at other cities, what their benefits is, so Karina Faya can go ahead and get those benefits. Enough is enough with this city council. We, the people, are fed up. We, the people, go ahead and want you to listen to us. And for some reason, this council doesn't. And I know there's a lot of people upset. And in regards to the bigger corporations, rent control is wrong. Let's make that completely clear. It is wrong. You are doing what they call an illegal taken. And when someone sues us, you guys will be accountable. And that is a very big concern. Again, Carl Michaelman, non-resident. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Michaelman. John Culver,
Hello, can you hear me?
we can go ahead.
Excellent. John Culver, proud resident of Kenmore. Council, I told you I loved you back in January. I gave you my heart. You let me down. We have yet another setback on the initiative vote. I'm glad it's finally happening, but I've said that 2 or 3 times already. So let's dig into this a bit further. Honest mistakes definitely happen. So I don't want to zoom in on this particular bump in the road at miss of the broader trend here. We don't even have to assign nefarious intent or motives. Intent and impact are separate beasts. And by that measure of impact, save for a few early supporters, the city, in a unified team effort, really a group project, has dragged its feet on this. 4 months ago, I told leaders in the community that the city was dragging its feet on this. And I was so naive then, but I bit my tongue to say much more on public comment on this. But it was still 2 or 3 meetings later that we finally got a vote. Now we need another one. And this isn't even the final one. Fam, what we need is a new story to tell. We started actively lobbying council on this issue with overwhelming unanimous support from the community. Back in August, we had a well-cut stake on the process from MSRC and the well-defined law prescribed by the legislature. We had more than ample precedent and political coverage, seeing as most every other city in the Puget Sound region has these powers. And it ultimately sailed through on a 7-0 vote. All told, despite that slam dunk, it's still going to take a full year. If y'all want to talk about being responsive to the needs of the community and service delivery to constituents, I've got some notes. We've got a pretty instructive case study here. I mean, really think about it. Imagine there was another slam dunk 7-0 issue. If Joe Biden got on the phone and offered the city a $10 million check and every other city already accepted, would it take 11 months to deliberate, vote, and complete the transaction? There would be some collective demonstration of gumption, management, and oversight and follow through to complete the necessary steps to get it done, right? So why was this one so vastly different? I know the city has a fire in them. Let's juxtapose this to a recent SEPA appeals process initiated by Planning Commissioner Tracy Bonashinsky, where in stark contrast, umpteen city lawyers leapt out of the woodwork and sprung into action to preemptively argue that the appeal be dismissed before it even got started. And apparently preemptively started printing notices for the hearing before the final date for the hearing was even set. No stone left unturned for preemptively taking a lot of action to stifle any perceived challenge of power. If you're sensing some affinity on themes here, you need to be aware that's very much the message that's been received. But hey, whatever, the vote's happening, so let me try and end on a more positive note. With all this initiatives talk, there's been what feels like a lot of speculation about potential initiatives the community might pursue. And there's one idea I finally want to talk about and take folks' temperature on. I'm not actively working on it yet, but I think it could be popular. We're actually kicking around the idea of annexing the city of Briar. It's just going to be called Northwest Kenmore going forward. And we get another pizza place, which is cool. So anyway, I've said my piece once more, again, with enthusiasm in the spirit of getting to the point and not dragging it out further. Y'all are going to make me do it again. Initiatives.
Thank you, Mr. Culver. Carrie Bergstrom Halls. Carrie Bergstrom Halls, are you with us?
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Kenmore City Council members and Mayor Herbig. My name is Carrie Bergstrom Halls, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. In 2000, I was a single mom and moved to Kenmore with my 4-year-old daughter. Up until then, I worked and lived in Redmond, renting an apartment, but realized if I wanted to purchase, I would need to live further out. Back then, Kenmore was a lot more affordable, and I found a nice little townhouse that was perfect for my daughter and myself. I am forever grateful to the warm and welcoming Kenmore community that embraced us both. My daughter attended Arrowhead Elementary, Kenmore Junior High, and graduated from Inglemoor High School back in 2014. I could not have asked for a better education through the North Shore School District. After getting married, in 2009, my husband and I each sold our individual homes and purchased our first house together where we raised our daughters. In 2019, after living there 10 years and becoming empty nesters, we purchased a single-level home just a couple miles down the road in Bothell, hoping we'll be able to age in place. We decided to rent out our Kenmore house versus selling, both for our sentimental reasons and as an investment vehicle. A lovely young family with a baby and a dog were the first to apply, and they have been our tenants ever since. Their rent is what our mortgage payment was back in 2009, well below market rate. In the 3 years that they have lived there, we have not raised the rent at all. We have a mutually respectful and beneficial relationship. They take great care of our house and are great tenants, and we are responsive landlords who are happy to charge less to keep wonderful tenants. It seems your singular focus is low-income residents while not giving any thought to middle-income renters and how this will impact them. Small landlords are offering affordable housing to Kenmore residents who do not want to live in an apartment and either don't want the responsibility of home ownership or can't afford to purchase at this time. To purchase our house now based on current values, a 20% down payment would be $250,000 and the monthly mortgage payment would be $2,000 more per month than what they are currently paying in rent. I worry about the family we rent to and what the future will look like for them. I have talked to many small landlords in Kenmore after these most recent tenant protections were passed, and the majority have said that after their current tenants vacate, rather than finding a new tenant with these new ordinances, they will sell. We will be doing the same. What will happen to middle income renters when so many landlords sell their homes? Their only option if they want to stay in Kenmore will be to live in an apartment or pay an exorbitant amount renting from a corporate landlord with zero ties to the community. These newly passed tenant protections give zero consideration to small mom and pop landlords while opening us up to a huge financial risk. Who wants to rent what is most likely their largest asset for just first month's rent and a deposit that can be paid over 6 months to a stranger that they can't even run a proper background check on? Do you know how much property damage a bad tenant can do to your home? Do you realize how many months it takes to evict someone for non-payment of rent? I realize that you are not going to provide small landlords with any protections, but please at least recognize our value. Exempt us from being—
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bergstrom-Halls. I'm sorry to cut you off. We have a large crowd with us this evening.
Thank you.
Tracy Benishinsky.
Tracy Benishinsky, Kenmore. As I'm sure you are all aware, the IPCC just released its most recent report on the state of the climate and says that we are failing to keep global temperature rise below 1.5 degrees Celsius. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says we're sleepwalking to climate catastrophe. If anyone is charged with representing the entire world, it is him, and he's howling. He has abandoned diplomacy in favor of the truth. He says high-emitting governments and corporations are not just turning a blind eye, they are adding fuel to the flames. They are choking our planet based on their vested interests and historic investments in fossil fuels when cheaper renewable solutions provide green jobs, energy security, and greater price stability. Climate activists are sometimes depicted as dangerous radicals, but the truly dangerous radicals are the countries that are increasing the production of fossil fuels. Investing in new fossil fuels infrastructure is moral and economic madness. Strong words and truth. We have arrived at yet another breaking point. Which way in Kenmore will we turn? I have two asks of you tonight. First, please be advocates of moving faster and harder against climate collapse whenever you can, including in the Kenmore Climate Action Plan. I am heartened that Kenmore is undertaking the important work of developing such a plan. It is good work, and in the way of both and, it is also too little too late. Please give city staff permission to be bolder and push harder and ask for the more that we need to be doing. Work with surrounding municipalities to cut PSE out of the picture in favor of a utility that will take the bold steps needed to provide renewable energy to our homes and businesses on an accelerated timeline. Make that utility provide salmon-safe energy while you're at it. Advocate for the resiliency that comes from a healthy environment. Stop allowing development to degrade and destroy the very ecosystems that could help pull us out of this climate freefall. My child does not need your diplomacy. He needs your advocacy, and so do we all. This is the moment for you to step up as the leaders we need. Second, please be advocates for governmental transparency and true power sharing with the residents of Kenmore. Lack of transparency and power sharing has played an integral role in how we have come to live through this moment of climate collapse, and it needs to change. Someday when I have more time, I will tell the story of how the city of Kenmore dismissed a SEPA appeal of which I was a part, and the fact that they were able to block me out of the process purely on procedural grounds. Someday I will tell you how the city of Kenmore sent 2 well-paid attorneys and a paralegal to my inbox and used aggression to wield power over, creating a situation in which the city protected itself against the knowledge, wisdom, and voice of a very slight, pretty harmless human being. Someday I will relate how that experience is tied to the very problems we are facing today, but 3 minutes is short, so more to come. And my ask is that you remember who you are serving. People, not corporations. People, not the city as corporation. People, not faceless systems. People. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you tonight and for your leadership. I genuinely appreciate you all, and I believe in you. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, I think we can go to the next person.
Stand by. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hear me? Okay. I had to switch my microphone. Thank you, Tracy Benishinsky. William Moran, followed by Patrick O'Brien, Dakota Rash, and David Morton. William, are you with us? William? William Moran, are you with us?
I got promoted. I'm waiting in line.
Okay, Mr. Burbo, please mute yourself for the time being. We'll move on to Patrick O'Brien.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Pat O'Brien here in Kenmore, and the upcoming new process for Puget Sound Clean Air and the activities at the asphalt and concrete facility. We're looking at this in an entirely wrong way. There have been violations. There's no doubt about that. We have them recorded. The city knows about the violations, and yet they're participating in a process that may well give them an avenue to proceed and continue making asphalt in Kenmore. And it's high time, after the millions of dollars we spent doing a development plan for Lake Point, to cease those operations, because they are also criminal activities. And I have pointed that out in a letter that I've addressed to all of the city council people. There are numerous criminal activities that have taken place in obstruction, collusion, to name a few. And we need to block any possibility of these people who, for years and years, have not legally had a grandfather clause, because everything they did to upgrade that plant was collusion behind the scenes, and they obstructed that. So the rent control, just think of this. In the rent control sphere, we've got 7% inflation, and you have a mandatory 3% rise that you're allowed for your property rent. So think about that. Think about the slippage to those people that have rentals. I'd like to know what the One Washington memorandum was. You got everybody to vote for it, but you didn't tell us what it meant. You didn't say what powers that would bring. So please explain when you all say, oh yeah, we like that, and no, we're not telling the public what the One Washington is. I smell a rat there. And then as far as Christ the Redeemer goes, I've sent a letter out. Those people, the body that is responsible did not notify the neighborhood within 1,000 feet. I can get affidavits to that. They need to reapply. I've called all the city council people that were on my list, and one who is a neighbor up there, Deborah, said, no, oh no, we might have got it wrong this time, but we'll make it better next time. Well, there shouldn't be a next time. This should actually be enough to reject their permit in May and make them reapply. And I'd like to see that church and Reverend Fox take out $1 million bond. They're going to do that in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. William Moran, coming back to you. Are you with us? William?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm new to this. I've sent most of the council members, they should be familiar with me. I've sent most of them letters and talked to some directly. And I think Mr. Baker's the only one that really had any compassion toward our thoughts of not having this homeless camp. I live in Uplake, about 2 blocks from the Redeemer Church. And I have over 30 years of law enforcement. I did community policing. I've trained officers and I've trained civilians on homeless. Let me tell you something. There is no way there is not going to be crime. It's not if, it's absolute. This is not an appropriate place to have a homeless encampment a shelter, anything. I mean, it's not fair to the citizens. I've spoke to Chief Moan about it, Brian Hampson, Reverend Fox, Camp Unity officials. We met in person with most of them and discussed our concerns. And, this just absolutely should not be happening. What gives the city the right to overnight change an established community and bring, like I say, it's going to be crime, absolutely. Almost 100% of these homeless have a record. Now, the only record that they're checking them for is sexual offense. That's nothing. Okay, it could be homicide or arson or any horrible, crime. This needs to stop. It's not fair to overnight change a residential community and make it unsafe. It's not fair to devalue the houses overnight. Do you think that anyone within a block of there or near there is going to be able to sell their home? Oh, what's that? Oh, that's a homeless shelter. Wow, I really want my kids and family to be moving into that. You've devastated the value of these homes. And another thing you better take in consideration, if you're devastating the value, you better reduce the taxes on all these houses to about half of what they're paying, because that's what you're doing to them. It's unbelievable that the community has to even fight for this. These people from Camp Unity coming in to this, some of them they're coming from Woodinville and other places. They're coming from places that aren't even from this community of Kenmore. And some of them have been with Camp Unity for 3 years. How long does it take to get your feet, to get your foot set and get going and make something of yourself? This isn't right. This needs to stop. And we need the council to do something now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moran.
Thank you.
Dakota Rash, followed by David Morton, Ed Pearson, Stacy Valenzuela, Josh Krasinski, Penny, Paul Lee, Mike Burbo, and John Peoples. Dakota, are you with us?
I'm with you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Dakota Rash. I actually live in Lake Forest Park, but I work in Kenmore. I want to take actually a chunk of my comment that I wasn't planning on making on this subject to talk about compassion for the transient community. I work at a coffee shop, and you know who never causes an issue in that coffee shop? Transient community. You know who politely asks for whatever water they want? The transient community. You know who stuffs napkins into their half-finished mochas and puts it onto our counter for us to clean? Paying customers. So this community has suffered from a lot of stereotypes for a long time, and we need a compassionate future. So I would promote you all to please educate yourselves on that compassion, and thank you for adopting the Camp Unity project. Now I'm here to talk about a more classic subject for me, environmentalism. I think Tracy Boniczynski did a lovely job bringing up the IPCC, and I would reflect her comments that we are in a dire state, and I'm glad the city of Kenmore is starting to form a Kenmore's Climate Action Plan. And I would also follow the trend of promoting you all to be more ambitious with it. I have a lot of thoughts on this that I'd be happy to share with folks and talk to folks about. I'll just limit my comment to a couple things tonight. I think the timeline of decarbonization could be quicker. You know, the IPCC tells us that the global goal is net zero by 2050 and 50% or more by 2030. However, for developed countries, they have a responsibility to do this faster. They have more means to do this. So I think Kenmore should be more ambitious with its timeline. Let's get to 67 or 70% decarbonization by 2030. I would commend you on BE 2.1, electrify everything. That is what we need to do to ensure a green future. We need to electrify our homes, our cars, our utilities, everything. And I see that there is that in this plan. I'd like to see, however, more action verbs when we talk about this sort of thing. So I think too often there are verbs like consider and study and reference, and perhaps that's where you would like to be right now since you're just adopting this plan. But I would urge you to go faster. I would urge you to adopt binding resolutions with timelines, very specific and very specific details on what you're going to be doing and when and where. I'm also seeing, and I'll make this my final comment, a little disconnect between the hierarchy of language in this report. So for example, use less energy and drive less are prioritized over use cleaner energy. That kind of perpetuates the stereotype that, or the false narrative that's been promoted by fossil fuel industries, that the duty is on the individual to reduce their consumption. And really, we need transformation to societies that are based off of clean energy. And for example, don't make cars the default. I know you can do this, so I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dakota Rash. David Morton.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. I'm David Morton. I live near Redmond. In May 2020, Kenmore resident Vicki Grayland told me about the air quality problems caused by Cadman's asphalt plant in Kenmore. Then Elizabeth Mooney and Janet Hayes of Kenmore told me about the long history of environmental concerns involving Kenmore's asphalt and concrete plants. Janet showed me public records from PSCAA, and I soon found out that the asphalt plant was illegally using medium curing cutback asphalt to manufacture their product, which is hot mix asphalt. Medium curing cutback asphalt is a product made by refineries by thinning asphalt cement or binder with kerosene. PSCAA defines cutback asphalt as an asphalt cement or binder that has been blended with more than 7% petroleum distillates, such as kerosene. To clarify, the Kenmore plant was not manufacturing cutback asphalt. They used it as an ingredient, mixing it with hot aggregate to manufacture hot mix asphalt. Kerosene was not burned in this process. Like paint thinner, the kerosene evaporated into the air. Mixing medium curing cutback asphalt with hot aggregate in Cadman's pug mill mixer caused huge volumes of kerosene vapors to evaporate. These VOC emissions greatly exceeded estimates obtained by simply applying AP42 emission factors. Many people experienced ill health effects from the plant's stench and fumes. It's obvious from the PSCAA on-site compliance evaluation of the asphalt plant on September 11th, 2017, that Cadman routinely used medium curing cutback asphalt and stored it in their 25,000 gallon asphalt cement storage tank. Cadman now says that, quote, cutback asphalt is not currently in use, and there's no proposal to use cutback asphalt, end quote. So that Cadman does not continue to mix cutback asphalt with hot aggregate, the order of approval contains condition number 20, which prohibits the storage of cutback asphalt in the 2 asphalt cement storage tanks. I made my first public comment at a Kenmore City Council meeting in September 2020. For the sake of Kenmore residents, my objective was and is to stop Cadman's use of cutback asphalt, and as a result, to stop their stench and toxic asphalt fumes. Today, in my 50th testimony to Kenmore City Council, I hope that you please support PSCAA's issuance of order of approval number 11861. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morton. Ed Pearson, followed by Stacy Valenzuela and Josh Kursinka. Ed Pearson?
Yes, hi, good evening. You can hear me okay?
We can, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Honorable City Council. My name is Ed Pearson. And in 2016, my wife and I were fortunate enough to purchase a piece of property in Kenmore, 6241 Northeast 182nd Street. And I am here this evening to voice my opposition to the issuing of the homeless encampment permit, and ask that this council revoke and rescind the permit on grounds that there was never proper notice given to homeowners, and there was never a public forum that was made available to homeowners. We understand that the permit that was issued was done so in violation of Ordinance 18.100.200, Section 3. My property abuts the Redeemer Church, and we share property lines. I have a young family that has been renting from me and from my wife for the last 4 years. They live in that household and have been there for 4 years, as I said, but they have 2 small girls that regularly play in the backyard. The parents of these young girls have expressed fear for their children and safety and their personal property, and have indicated that they will be looking for a new home to rent for the summer. Your unilateral decision, and a decision made without public comment, will cost, and really probably common sense, will cost me well over $5,000 in lost rental income, and perhaps as much as $15,000 if I can't fill that vacancy due to the homeless encampment that borders my property. This is an inappropriate location for an encampment, and I respectfully request, Mr. Mayor and the City Council, to revoke this permit, find a more suitable non-residential location within the city to permit a homeless encampment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Stacy Valenzuela?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Thank you. Stacy Valenzuela, Kenmore. We are at a pivoting point in Kenmore. Hundreds are facing evictions and $200 to $800 rent increases as we continue to be in this pandemic. Many on fixed income are having trouble with increases in food costs, rent, and utilities. Others can't work due to closed businesses, closed daycare, or illness. Thank you for tenant protections. As Earth Day approaches, environmental justice needs to come back to the enforcement. We have a chance to follow the path of climate change with actions and support a healthier community. People love Kenmore because of its open spaces, natural habitat, trees, and wildlife, despite the actions of some of the city staff that have failed at protecting our city, giving variances and permits, encroaching on protected areas and wetlands, causing concerns. We need to stop the cementing of natural habitat in our parks. Our wildlife, trees, ecosystems, and wetlands should be protected over recreational activities and larger homes. An extra 200,000 feet in homes is not worth this loss. Kenmore's CAP plan needs to include industry, the huge contributor of greenhouse gases and pollution, the asphalt and cement plants. After 15 years, residents' odor and petroleum soot complaints from the asphalt plant are finally being addressed in a public hearing on April 18th. Please speak up now and look at the 30 stipulations and email your comments. Puget Sound Comprehensive Plan for 22 to 26 is also looking for survey responses by the 15th of April, protecting our waterways community from chemical toxins. We need to clean up our MOTCA sites, our waterways. We need action implementing these changes to improve our air, water, and lands. Our residents and climate are suffering, and it may be too late. We live in a city with many environmental stewards that are deserving of accepting the proclamation of Earth Day and thanked for their actions. None stand out stronger than the Wallace Swamp Creek group led by Tracy Braniski, who for years gathered residents cleaning berry roots on the creek and trail and brought forward many environmental protections. Janet Hayes, who for over 20 years on her own behalf brought forward environmental concerns. Vicki Grayland, K4C, and Kenmore People for Climate Action brought forward the climate action change, as well as worked on environmental services, the letter to Inslee, and solutions. Snow King, that spent time educating our several events, and many others who live daily, picking up litter, recycling every item that could be recycling, planting seedlings, leaving less of a carbon footprint, and volunteering in our community. What can you do to contribute today? Thank you very much and enjoy Earth Day.
Thank you, Ms. Valenzuela. John Kursinka, followed by Penny, Paul Lee, and Mike Burbo. Josh Kursinka, go ahead.
Thank you. I live on 182nd Street, actually across the street from Ed's property. Last week, I was disheartened to learn that despite a signature petition that had gathered the endorsement of dozens of concerned citizens, meetings with the development services team, emails and letters all articulating safety and legal concerns, a permit was issued for the homeless encampment at the Episcopal Church of the Redeemer. At present, it appears that this permit violates both the parking and notification criteria laid out in Ordinance 18.100.200. Specifically, the planned encampment violates Section 3 that says no shelter shall displace any required parking for the principal use on the property as a result of the shelter. For those of you who don't know, the current site plan takes up almost the entire parking owned by the church. Additionally, I've spoken with, and you've heard tonight, multiple property owners located within 1,000 feet of this encampment, and well over half are reporting that they were never received notification of the encampment as required by Section 4 of the ordinance. Further, the permit violates the approved housing element from the Kenmore Planning Commission, which guarantees residents like myself and the neighbors you're hearing tonight the protection of the quality of a residential environment. Beyond all of these technical flaws, though, is the simple reality that this encampment poses a direct and significant security threat to my family, to the neighbors' families, and to all the residents and businesses located nearby. Please understand, there are 2 daycares located next to this facility. There are families with infants. There are families like my own with elementary age children. There are single women, and there are many other residents who would be classified as vulnerable. One need not look any further than this past weekend's front page Seattle Times article entitled "Magnets of Crime: How One of Seattle's Politicians Shifted His Views on Homeless Encampments." The article summarizes how the head of the homeless committee in Seattle, not an insignificant perspective, changed his views due to the overwhelming statistical evidence of the danger these camps represent. To quote the council member from the article, encampments are massive magnets for crime. On that, the data is clear. I stand before the council this evening as a very concerned father and a frustrated resident, asking that this permit be revoked immediately and that there be a public hearing before any further action takes place. While my heart goes out to those impacted by homelessness, it is my responsibility as a father, and frankly, it is the responsibility of the city to first and foremost protect the safety and security of the families that live here first. There are literally dozens of more appropriate sites where this could be located that are not in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Please listen to myself and many of the others that you're listening to tonight, revoke the permit and hold a public hearing.
Thank you so much, Josh. Penny? Penny, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can, go ahead.
Yes, I'm speaking to the Camp Unity at the Church of Redeemer situation. I was disappointed to learn of the Kenmore City Council, the Kenmore City Administrator's decision to issue the Camp Unity permit to the Church of the Redeemer. This decision was made in spite of the fact that council members, city administrators, the chief of police, and church leadership have all been made aware on multiple occasions of the objections and concerns of the neighborhood residents. Council members have disassociated themselves from the decision-making process in spite of the fact that the city administrator responsible for issuing the permit ultimately works for the mayor and the city council. I must ask the council why they would willingly introduce this urban blight into our community. We need only look at Seattle and Lake City to see the hazards homeless encampments can bring to communities. And you, the elected members of the council, are deliberately putting property values at risk, which will ultimately lead to urban flight and overall destabilization of our community. Since this ordinance, Kenmore Municipal Code 18.100.200 was passed in 2018, I have noted a marked increase in panhandling. And more recently, I have become aware of 3 homeless individuals that now call downtown Kenmore home. This can be taken as nothing less than a harbinger of what is to come if we continue on this course in Kenmore. You are responsible for the safety and welfare of the citizens who elected you. Please do the job you were elected to do and protect the citizens of Kenmore by rescinding this permit. Thank you.
Excuse me, Penny, we need your full name and your city of residence for the record, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Penny McGilvery, and it's 6234 in Kenmore.
Thank you so much.
Paul Lee.
Am I on?
You are. Go ahead.
Okay, great. My name is Paul Lee. I've been an area resident for the last 25 years. I now live in Kenmore. I'm also retired and I don't have a large income. I was in the midst of building an ADU to supplement my income to cover the huge tax increases in recent years, and I've already spent tens of thousands of dollars to date on it. The measures passed in the last council meeting put a dead halt to my ADU development, and I'm now in the process of reevaluating all of our options, including the option to sell our home while the market is hot. Why stop the ADU? Well, not being able to collect the Social Security number means difficulty getting things like credit history and criminal history of potential renters. There's been major increase in the worsening of compromising one's ethics all the way to brazen crimes in recent years. Regular people have taken advantage of things like the moratorium during the pandemic. Many could have still paid, but didn't, and many small landlords lost their shirt. Doctors and dentists won't treat you with a Social Security number, and they only will see you for maybe 1 hour at a time. These are people you may have to live with for 24/7, 365, around some of us who have wives and young children. It is madness not to be able to get such info. Even with this right and ability to check one's background, my neighbor on Finn Hill suffered for years with a bad renter who not only created tens of thousands of dollars in damage to their rental home, but also caused regular commotion in the wee hours of the night, with the police coming to our immediate neighborhood several times over a period of a few years. I think it was at least a half dozen times with that specific renter. It is this kind of thing that led many of us to breathe a sigh of relief when we heard that the home was finally purchased to live in by an owner as opposed to a renter. The burden remains on the small landlords to provide a safe place to live that meet building and safety codes and ordinances. This is an expensive endeavor. Not being able to collect the proper securities and deposits as well as background information further erodes the abilities of the small landlord to provide proper value to the community with affordable housing by keeping us here in the community. Or like Seattle has imposed similar rules, you have a total net loss of 3,000 rental units in less than a year in the face of a population boom in the area, thus driving costs even higher at the potential cost of losing further development. So who am I in the community? The diminishing middle-class homeowner and landlord that bridges the gap between the wealthy and the demographic of the average renter. I bought my home in 1997 when homes were less than about a fifth the current prices. I paid off my home, but my mortgage was only $1,500 when I had one. If and when I sell my home due to these types of measures not making it sustainable for me, you will get one of two buyers. Either a wealthy family that doesn't need to rent, or an investor who will have a mortgage of at least $6,000 a month who will be more motivated to pay off his high mortgage. Either way, by removing me from the community, the marginalized or even the regular renter will have more difficulty living in an area where the standard of living will go sky high due to increased income disparity in the area and pay higher prices for rent. Small landlords like me can afford to slow our rent increases, but we do not have the flexibility
Thank you,
to
Mr.
not
Lee.
do credit.
Mr. Lee, your time is up. Thank you for sharing. Mike Burbo, followed by John Peoples and Janet Hayes.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can go ahead.
Michael Burbo, Kenmore. That's where I live. I would like to talk to council this evening about the tenant protection scheme, or as what the smaller landlords have come to recognize as being what looks like, guys, rent control. I'm going to surmise what I've actually come to understand what's happening and express some of my disappointment here. I mean, basically, if I was to actually rent my place out now, which was the plan, I have to let a complete stranger into my house and move in before I actually ask for first and last and the security deposit, at which point I can offer them a payment scheme for this. I'm not sure how that is supposed to work with strangers in my house. The other parts that I'm a little confused about was this relocation assistance. So if by virtue of taxation, whatnot going up, I have to raise my rents. And like the other small landlords, this was supposed to be, I'm going to downsize, move someplace, rent my place out, not make a big profit with it, just get it going, have something of a nest egg. The fact of the matter is that if I have to raise those rents, I now have to provide relocation assistance of up to what was it, 3 months? God, I can't actually look into the people that are going to be renting this house. I find that remarkable. I find that quite disturbing, and I find it basically as rent control. It looks and smells like rent control. And I have to concur with my fellow small landlords or prospective landlords like Carl and Carrie and Paul, that this at its face value this does not work. And this is actually going to go backwards. This is going to make things far, far worse. I keep seeing things like Karina citing that, oh, well, other councils are doing these things. And then I read things just days ago that other councils are now trying to figure out a way out of it because they're losing their renters. There's not enough people renting places anymore. This is going to backfire, guys. And I, for one, I'm no longer interested in renting in Kenmore or offering my place to rent in Kenmore, which is a tragedy. I love this place. Been here for a decade. I've been in the area for over 20 years. So please, guys, make this a balanced act. Make it balanced for the landlords and the renters. This is all one way. This is untenable and it cannot be worked. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Burbo. John Peoples?
Yes, John Peoples, Kenmore. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Well, good evening. It's already sundown and it's nighttime. And I'd like to offer a kudos and a well done to the City Council and the municipal employees for the Sammamish River Bridge progress and for the improvements at the Swamp Creek Park. And I'm very much looking forward to the grand reopening of Squires Landing Park as well. And someday I'm sure I'll find a good reason to offer some kudos again, but tonight there's some more complaining. Landlords, I'm concerned that the City Council has, as a whole, decided that they would dump on the little fellow, the mom and pop landlords, and made it more expensive for them. And the result of that will be fewer opportunities for renters to rent in Kenmore. So even in the early 80s, the old Soviet economists let Gorbachev know that they, in the end, they could not control everything. And I'm concerned that the Kenmore City Council is trying to, control everything in a way that has been proven that it is untenable. As for that proposed Briar annexation, City Council, I urge you to never, ever consider that. I welcome the asphalt and concrete plant as a good neighbor, as long as they continue to be a good neighbor. For those concerned about the environment, kudos to those who engage in recycling and trash pickup and planting trees. All of that is good stuff. And I would also like to recommend to the City Council the carbon neutral and clean resource of nuclear energy. It really is safe. And it's a lot of power for a little bit. Let's see. And the homeless camp, a big old capital N-O. I'd like to ask that the City Council offer to the campers opportunities for self-improvement. Also, I'd like to see a tax reduction, property tax reduction for those within 1 mile of this homeless camp. That's a great idea. Also, unfortunately, the City Council continues to endorse racism in the form of the pyramid of white supremacy that is available on the Diversity, Inequality, and Exclusion website. As long as that is endorsed by the City Council, you endorse it. Please stop it.
Thank you, Mr. Peoples.
You're welcome.
Janet Hayes?
Yes, I'm Janet Hayes and I reside in Kenmore. I've been here since 2004. My comment is the only asphalt, I don't think a lot of the community realizes that the only asphalt plant we have in Kenmore was not built here in Kenmore. In the late 1960s, Knowles Construction made a purchase, and it was hauled here piece by piece used after being the equipment of the defunct Metro Paving Asphalt Company in Everett. Past council have sat and listened to public comments regarding the fumes for 20 years. They have, the asphalt plant has avoided actual stack testing of VOCs since its inception. Now we have a new permit being issued if Cadman accepts it. Cadman has been allowed to operate even though this permit has been, they were found in violation. If they don't accept the permit, they will continue to operate with no testing, as they have done for years. The opportunity of testing both the particulate and the VOCs is in the new permit. I am asking the city to insist testing for VOCs on that new permit. They are asking for 36 months, every 36 months. I'm asking for, my community is asking for VOC testing every 18 months and particulates once a year. We have been damaged. Our shoreline has been damaged. The majority of the product arrives in barges pulled by tugs or pushed by tugs of product to make asphalt. They have used our federal Kenmore navigation channel, but the only people that benefit from the tugs and barges coming into that wharf are the private owners of the Kenmore berthing channel, Pioneer Towing, Cadman Asphalt, and Cal Portland Cement, and Kenmore Air. I challenge you, council, to go out and take a look at what goes into the north end of Lake Washington in the berthing channel. That is part of Lake Washington, which is federal waters, statewide federal waters. Please protect it.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Elizabeth Mooney? You might have to unmute one more time.
Hi, Anastasia. Is that better?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, council. Hi, staff. Elizabeth Mooney, citizen of Kenmore and PERK president, People for Environmentally Responsible Kenmore. I'm standing here next to our heron in City of Kenmore, and I wanted to let you know that on Thursday afternoon, by what is behind the heron, can you see that hanger? I'm going to be out here and try to help people who may not know everything, like what Janet Hayes was just explaining before me about the asphalt plant and what David Morton was talking about the comments, Dakota Rash, Stacy Valenzuela. We will help out people who want to learn more about the grandfathered situation at the Cadman plant and the opportunity at the public hearing where we can give comments on April 18th at 4 p.m. So if you come here this Thursday, I will sit out and hopefully people will join me and we'll get a cup of coffee and we'll talk about what kind of comments we can make to the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency on April 18th, or comments to Brian Renninger at Puget Sound Clean Air Agency before May 2nd. Tonight, we're going to hear from Cascadia Law about some of the updates that they've learned, and that will be great. So hopefully we'll come with that information on Thursday. So from 4 to 5 o'clock here in beautiful Kenmore. I hope I'm not making you sick. There's the stoop, and there are the rocks. So bring also for Earth Day ideas, signs that you can decorate, and we can maybe put together a fun love Kenmore, love the clean air and love the clean water. And I'll bring some pens, bring your kids if you want, and we can make some lovely signs that celebrate saving our trees and our salmon and restoring kokanee. And we can have fun, maybe bring your chalk and we can make chalk drawings on the pavement here, because I know that Rob Carlinzi, our manager, said that we can do that. So bring your ideas for celebrating our earth and saving it for our public health as well. And yes, I definitely do not like, and I will be commenting about how I really don't like having an asphalt facility on my shoreline. But you can bring your voices and comments, and we will help you know how to make comments that get to Puget Sound Clean Air Agency so they count in this very important opportunity to stop the grandfather situation at that plant that Janet Hayes was just previously informing the public about. It is all about environmental justice, and the time is now. This has gone on way too long, and Kenmore should be the beacon, the example for climate action, good energy. So come Thursday, I'll be here Saturday morning around 9 to 10 too. And if there are more people who want to help out, come meet me here and we can share numbers and emails. It's all about the communities collectively working together.
I think we lost Miss Mooney.
Yes, and the clock had not been working either. She got a bit more time.
Yes, I noticed that. Thank you, Councilmember Marshall. Mayor Herbig, I don't see any additional hands raised.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda, study session, Cascadia Law Group's update on Cadman's asphalt plant operations presented by Cascadia Law Group.
And Mayor, give us a minute while we promote our guests.
Sure.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm just as a heads up, I'm having really bad internet connections tonight. I hope I don't get kicked off. I'll be running the presentation. If I do, hopefully Anastasia can jump on and cover for me a little bit. But we'll do the best we can here. But as you are all aware, this is a update on the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency's notice of construction permit. That they issued a draft permit actually, and so this is the update from our experts, our consultant experts that we have working with us on this case. And we do have Dennis McLaren, who's been with us from the start on this case, and he's from Cascadia Law Group. And for the public's information and also the council's information, the previous consultant we had from TRC has retired, but we do have somebody just as good from TRC here. Gail Hofnagel is here too as the expert air consultant. And we might have Bridget Baker joining us tonight as well if we have any questions regarding the actual odor complaints. But with that, I'm going to start the presentation. And I'm going to turn it over to Dennis McLaren and Gail to go through the presentation. And then afterwards, we'll have some opportunity for questions and comments.
So thank you, Brian, and good evening, Mayor Herbig and members of the City Council and city staff and members of the public that are listening in. And Brian is going to bring up our presentation here, but I should say that we are joined by Gail Hofnagel from TRC Companies, and Gail should get some sort of award because he's on the East Coast and is 3 hours later. So please give him a thumbs up for joining us tonight. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. The council asked us to come back and do a presentation in a public session so that we could share an overview and give the public as well as the council the latest on the Cadman permit application in front of the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency. So we're going to talk quickly about the Cadman facilities permitting history, the permitting process in front of the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency, the draft permit that has been issued by the Clean Air Agency, and then explain what the process is going forward and what the opportunities are for the city and Kenmore citizens to make comments and present testimony to the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency. A little bit about the plant's history. You've heard this in public comments and you have had quite a few sessions on this, but Cadman is a hot mix asphalt plant, although now they say they're operating as a warm mix plant. There's been some changes in the formulations that allow asphalt products to be produced at lower temperatures than previously was the case. It is an older facility, and as one of the citizens mentioned tonight, it was initially constructed in the 1960s and moved to the site in Kenmore, and it was constructed before there were many of the modern air regulations that we now have, both at the federal level and at the regional level through the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency. The prior permits are quite old, and they don't have things like emission limits or testing requirements or monitoring requirements. What initiated this permit application that's in front of the Clean Air Agency now was odor complaints that were received both by the city and by the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency, and Cadman then was inspected and received a notice of violation from the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency because they had modified some of their process equipment and control devices without obtaining the required notice of construction permit from the Clean Air Agency. Brian, next slide. So the regulatory framework around this, the regulations at the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency and in the state of Washington require that any existing air emission source is required to obtain a notice of construction permit if they replace or substantially alter control equipment. And those permits are supposed to be obtained prior to the replacement of that equipment. But here, those changes were made and discovered by an inspection of the Clean Air Agency, and the permit application is for replacements and modifications that are already in place. And the review that is being done is related to those changes that were made without benefit of a permit. And what the Clean Air Agency is doing is reviewing those changes, and they have proposed adding additional operating conditions for the facility, and they're also addressing odor issues in the draft permit. We'll explain that as we go forward. Brian, next slide. So the permitting process in front of the Clean Air Agency, the applicant applies for that notice of construction permit, and the Clean Air Agency reviews an application to determine if it's complete. And here there was quite a bit of back and forth between the Clean Air Agency and Cadman about what would be required for a complete application. Things like modeling requirements by the Clean Air Agency, stack testing requirements for volatile organic compounds, the VOCs that people have mentioned as a concern. There was a State Environmental Policy Act checklist required, and there's some back and forth about the completeness of that. And when the Clean Air Agency determines that an application is complete and they've gone through the process of analyzing the information, here modeling and stack testing, as I mentioned, a draft permit is issued for comment. Next slide. So a draft permit was issued for public comment on March 3rd. It was a little over a year in the process before the Clean Air Agency, before a draft was issued. And a public hearing was requested by the city and many citizens of Kenmore, and the Clean Air Agency has now scheduled that public hearing for 4 p.m. on April 18th. And there's an opportunity for testimony in that public hearing, but there's also an opportunity up until May 2nd, 2022 to provide written comments on the draft permit to the Clean Air Agency. Next slide. In the permitting process, the Clean Air Agency did issue a determination of non-significance under the State Environmental Policy Act, and a DNS means that the Clean Air Agency concluded that there are no significant adverse environmental impacts created by the actions permitted that require further review under the State Environmental Policy Act. As you know, as council members, an environmental impact statement can be required when there are potentially significant adverse environmental impacts, and the Clean Air Agency determined that that was not the case in this circumstance and issued a DNS. Going forward, the city will be working with us at Cascadia and with Gail Hofnagel at TRC to provide some hearing testimony and then written comments after the public hearing. We've advised the city to wait until all the comments are in at the public hearing and listen to those, and then we'll regroup and make final written comments based on what citizens from Kenmore are testifying about and what others are testifying about, including Cadman at the public hearing. Next slide. So as we mentioned, the permit application is for replacement equipment, and it's replacement of the drum dryer and a related natural gas burner, and replacement of a couple of condensers on the heated asphalt storage tanks that are on the site. And as part of the permit application, the Clean Air Agency did require Cadman to do stack testing of the dryer for VOCs, the volatile organic compounds. And the Clean Air Agency also required air modeling to demonstrate that the facility would not create emissions violating federal air quality standards. And also, the state of Washington has an air toxics regulation, and the Clean Air Agency required a screening analysis for air toxics and some additional review for hexavalent chromium as well, which was above the screening levels, but turned out to be about a 40th of what the acceptable levels are for hexavalent chromium emissions under the state's air toxics regulations. Next slide. So key issues. The draft permit has been issued, as I said, and it evaluates risk from toxic air pollutants under the state's acceptable source impact levels regulations, the air toxics regulations that the state of Washington has put in place and that the regional clean air agencies are required to administer. And in that evaluation, they have determined that all levels of toxic air pollutant emissions are below the public health-based limits established under Washington's air toxic regulations. And they've also determined through air modeling that the facility meets all federal ambient air quality standards. It has undergone the stack testing that I mentioned, and it's also being required to meet best available control technology limits established for similar facilities. And I'm going to ask Gail to explain briefly what the best available control technology review entails, because that is an important part of determining whether the controls that are being placed are appropriate for a facility. So Gail, can you briefly describe the back review process?
Yes, it's a mechanism there that the agency goes through to evaluate all the control technologies that are available and used both in Washington state and around the country to control emissions from asphalt plants. And it insists, and so the method says that this facility should have the controls that are best available across the country for control of the emissions from the asphalt plant. So it's a rigorous analysis of control technology.
So one thing we would recommend for citizens that are listening in is that they not only take a look at the draft air permit, but they also look at the engineering worksheet that was prepared by the permit review engineer at the Clean Air Agency, because it explains in more detail what facilities they looked at for this back analysis, both in the state of Washington and outside the state of Washington. And it's instructive to look at that engineering worksheet above and beyond the permit itself. And then also modeling analysis was required and demonstrates that ambient air quality levels are below standards at the fence line and at some sensitive community receptors that people have identified. And Gail, do you want to talk a little bit about the kind of information that's required to do a modeling analysis?
Yes. Is the next set, is it on the next slide?
It's, yes, let's go to the next slide, but it was at the bottom of this slide as well.
Okay. The agency required Cadman to provide modeling analysis of the emissions of the facility. And the emissions of the facility were determined by a stack test. The emission testing was done in 2019, I'm sorry. And the results of the stack test analysis are in the packet of information that the agency put out at the time of the notice for the public hearing. So the emissions that are used in the modeling are from that stack test. The meteorological data came from the Everett, Washington Airport, and a protocol was prepared by Cadman and then reviewed by the agency and approved by the agency, and it requires the use of EPA, the US EPA's preferred model, which is called AirMod. And the agency's work on this required that they do all of this meteorological analysis and put locations. The model was asked to, there was 5 years of meteorological data, and the model was asked to put receptors along the fence line of the facility so that we know exactly what's coming across the fence line of the facility at a number of sensitive receptors that was picked out by the agency, and then in the general area of Kenmore and beyond. The results of this modeling analysis is, as Dennis has said, is that the only pollutant, toxic air pollutant, that was required to do modeling had a maximum concentration at the fence line of 1/40th of the acceptable source impact level in the state of Washington. So there's a demonstration here that the emissions from the facility are not expected under Washington law to be toxic. The other model results are that the Cadman sources at the fence line of the facility again. Small particles are 55% of the standard. Larger particles are 20% of the standard. Nitrogen dioxide emissions are half of the standard. The carbon monoxide emissions are 5% of the standard. And the results of all the pollutants beyond the fence line are much lower than those values. So the modeling passes the test of saying that there is not an air pollution problem related to the emissions that were sampled in 2019.
So we also should mention that the city brought us at Cascadia, and we brought TRC in as technical air consultants to make sure that the modeling was done using best practices, that we looked carefully at what the Clean Air Agency had required of Cadman and its technical consultants, and felt that it did meet best practices and is an accurate indication. So that's an important step that the city took, is to bring in technical experts like Gail and Karen Greenacre to review the work that was done. Emission testing requirements are part of the draft permit. As one of the citizens mentioned in their comment, Cadman must conduct initial emission testing within 90 days of receipt of the permit, and then every 12 months for opacity, and every 3 years for all of the permit limits. And we expect there will be comments from folks about the adequacy of those testing requirements, but that is a rigorous testing regime going forward. Next page. So a production limit of 200,000 tons of asphalt in any 12 consecutive months is established under the draft permit. And in recent years, the plant has only been producing about 50,000 tons annually. But importantly, the modeling and the work that was done to assess what the maximum emissions from the facility could be was based on the 200,000 tons rather than the actual 50,000 ton recent production, because the permit would allow a production limit of up to 200,000 tons. And that is important to understand, that the modeling and other area emissions reviewed by the Clean Air Agency has been based on that peak production limit, and stack testing was done to review the actual emissions when the facility was in production. Next slide. This one's an important area with respect to odors, and I'm going to let Gail describe what the Clean Air Agency has established here, but in more depth. But basically, if one of the Clean Air Agency inspectors based on a complaint, or the city inspector based on a complaint, detects a nuisance odor beyond the property line, it triggers an odor monitoring program that would have to occur on a weekly basis. And Gail, do you want to explain a little bit in more depth what the odor monitoring regime would be if that is triggered?
Well, the requirement is that Cadman hire somebody basically to go around the town and at the specific locations that are listed here on this slide, and do an odor analysis to make sure that there is an odor occurring. And hopefully we'll get a permit condition in there that they do that when Cadman is operating. And that would be the primary, a secondary means of testing the odor. That is, the first one is that agency person or duly authorized representative determines whether there's an odor, and then an independent consultant would be hired probably to check at the locations that are listed below.
Next slide, Brian. So also, this would trigger a complaint response program, including a complaint phone line and a method of communicating the results of investigation by Cadman or its consultant, and what corrective actions have been taken. And a big part of the importance of this odor condition and why it enhances the ability of the agency to take action is that it actually requires more information from Cadman. It requires particular steps be taken, and then if the Clean Air Agency decides that there are odors in the community based on this, it enhances their ability to take successful enforcement action going forward. And one of the things that we wanted to be clear about is that in the back and forth between the agency over the initial draft of the permit before it was released for public review, Cadman has expressed some objections regarding the rigor of the community odor monitoring and reporting requirements in the draft permit. And we'll be listening carefully in the public hearing to see if they continue to object to that. But that is an area that we think is particularly important going forward because of the community concerns about odors. The issues of air toxics exposure and cancer risk, and the issues of are there air quality standard violations are addressed by the permit requirements, but the odor issue is a separate issue, and this language is very important going forward in the draft permit. Next slide. Grandfathering, folks have mentioned a lot that this facility was grandfathered in prior to many of the current regulations. One of the things that the draft permit does is makes it clear that the facility must meet the current federal standards for performance for asphalt concrete plants that are in the Code of Federal Regulations, and the plant is no longer grandfathered under prior permits. And the new permit does require record keeping and reporting that enhance the ability of the Clean Air Agency's inspectors to respond to permitted violations and take compliance actions if needed, if there are any permit standard violations. Next page. So what's the process going forward? We mentioned previously that there is a public hearing at 4 p.m. on April 18th. That's likely to be one that has time limits on the testimony. In the past, I've seen them offer 3 to 4 minutes. If they have a lot of people in the time frame that they've got, they could limit to as little as 2 minutes. So it's one thing to provide public testimony at the public hearing, but it's another to provide written comments. There are no limits on what can be put in the written comments. And so it's important both to appear at the hearing, but also to prepare and submit written comments. It's likely that once those comments are in, a final permit could be issued as early as sometime in May. We don't know exactly when that will be, and it depends on how many comments they have to consider and whether they make any changes in the draft to the final permit. There'll be a chance to review the final permit. And under Washington law, there is a Pollution Control Hearings Board that can hear appeals of a final permit. And appeals have to be filed with the PCHB within 30 days after issuance of a final permit. We'll continue advising the city on whether there's anything that we believe is an appealable issue. And citizens can also consider whether to file an appeal, and CADMIN can also decide whether to appeal any of the conditions in the final permit. And we did conduct a public meeting on behalf of the city with PERK on March 31st, and we are planning to draft both some testimony and the final comments for the city to consider submitting on behalf of the city before that May 2nd date. And I think that is it for the presentation. So happy to answer questions, Mr. Mayor, members of the council.
Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you. What kind of controls then, what kind of new technology and equipment will likely be required by these new standards? And will they then substantially reduce the emissions that are still going to be coming out, or the toxic emissions that are still going to be coming out?
So again, the best available control technology review that was done establishes what the emission limits are. And it also has conditions with respect to the cutback asphalt issue that many people have commented in the past to the council about, and has a limit on the petroleum distillates that can be placed in the tanks that are used for processing. So it limits those petroleum distillates so that there cannot be the production of cutback asphalt at the facility. And Gail, do you want to comment further on that?
Yeah, there are the best available control technology limits particulate matter emissions from the facility and VOC emissions from the facility. So those are important benefits of the best available control technology analysis.
And I think one of the most important things about this process has been that the city and many of the citizens commented about wanting to see the results of stack testing for VOC, wanting to see modeling, and wanting to see that there has been an analysis of whether there are emissions that are toxic to the community, or that there are going to be ambient air quality standard violations, those federal ambient air quality standards. And the draft permit analyzes that and establishes that if operated within the permit limits that are established by this permit, that you will not have those conditions.
Thanks, but will it still reduce the new technology? Will it reduce the toxic emissions? And then is there any other type of equipment that might be used in that control technology?
Actually, there are not additional controls that are being required or imposed on the facility, but what there are permit limits and reporting requirements that establish that they must demonstrate that they're operating the facility at a level that does not produce harmful emissions.
The important part is, in fact, that the control technologies work and that they continue to work, and that Cadman keeps them up to spec and keeps them working. So that's an important enforcement mechanism, if you will, to make sure they're operating the control technology that they have correctly.
And again, the reporting requirements, the emission limits, the testing requirements, all of those give leverage for the Clean Air Agency to make sure they're operating well within the permit limits.
All of those things are spelled out in quite a bit of detail in the NOC worksheet, Notice of Construction worksheet, that was attached to the announcement.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yeah, I really appreciate your work and this thoughtful presentation. I'm glad that the testing that was done was the kind that folks asked for, and that it did show that the levels of of toxic emissions were well below the accepted levels. But I'm particularly appreciative in this permit, and I certainly hope we keep it, of the odor monitoring clauses. The fact that we don't have, frankly, toxic stuff at levels that are over regulation, that's one piece. But what we know is that we have odor control problems, and that odors can impact people, even if they're, some people and not others, and, even if they're not, frankly, carcinogenic. So I very much hope we can retain those. I think that's a really strong piece of this permit. Thanks.
Mr. Hampson.
Dennis, am I correct by saying that this current draft permit allows people to file an odor complaint from somewhere other than their home or place of business?
It does. That was one of the key concerns of citizens of Kenmore, was that people on the Burke-Gilman Trail, or people in a park, or in one of the commercial locations be able to make complaints to the Clean Air Agency when they experience odors. And so not only does it identify specific locations, it also requires that if odors have been experienced in the community and this three-part condition is triggered, that Cadman will have to have a person that is trained to go out and monitor in those locations and report about what they find and what corrective actions they're taking. So I think it has been improved and been responsive to what citizens have expressed as their concerns about having the ability to make complaints from multiple locations, including the Burke-Gilman Trail.
Do we have any other questions?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to work with the city. The city staff has been great to work with, and we've had quite a bit of interaction with the citizens of Kenmore as well, and multiple times to interact with the council. And hopefully we'll wrap this up in a very positive way with the public hearing and a final permit that addresses the community's concerns.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate the presentation.
And a little thumbs up for Gail. It's past 11:30 for him.
Oh, geez.
Oh, it's past midnight, but whatever.
Ooh, really late.
Well, thank you very much for staying up. We appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is Climate Action Plan Draft, presented by Environmental Services Manager Richard Sawyer, Administrative Specialist Sammy Rowan, and Cascadia Environmental Group for discussion.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you. All right. Oh, good. Looks like Angela has our presentation up. Well, good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm excited to be here tonight to receive your feedback regarding the city's draft climate action plan, which we have scheduled for adoption at the council's May 16th meeting. And joining me tonight from city staff is Sammy, as well as our consultants, Angela and Christina, who are with Cascadia Consulting Group. I know it's getting late, and our primary objective this evening is to give council a chance to provide any comment on the draft climate action plan. So I'm going to let Angela take over and provide a brief summary on where we're at and recent public comment we received, as well as some staff recommendations for council to consider this evening for final changes. And then I'd like to just open it up for council comment.
Great, thanks, Richard. Yeah, as Richard said, we're in the home stretch. So we just completed our third round of public engagement. So that's our final round. We had about 2,300 site visits to our landing page, which had the draft climate action plan available for folks to review and comment, and then up or down vote other people's comments. So we had a lot of site traffic. We received 44 comments in total with 13 individual respondents. The platform was open to the public for 3 weeks, and
Angela,
it was heavily promoted.
Angela, could you hold on 1 second? Sorry, it could just be me, but your noises or your voice is coming in patchy.
Okay, 1 second. Let me turn my headphones off and turn them back on.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me now?
That's much better.
Okay, thanks for letting me know. Not torture everyone the rest of the presentation. So we heavily promoted it through social media, flyering at multifamily buildings, posts through schools and PTA newsletters, email blasts, listservs, including the CAP listserv, webpage, and newsletters. And so the results at a high level, we asked folks kind of 3 guiding questions: if they have any concerns with the draft, their level of support for the draft, and then how strongly they feel that the CAP reflects and aligns with the priorities of the Kenmore community. So you can see here, most folks did not have concerns with the draft. The concerns are here for those who did. Highly supported, so a lot of strong support and somewhat support for the overall action plan. And then in terms of reflecting the community, again, very somewhat strong to strongly support with minimal opposed there. So some of the concerns included doubts around follow through, current capacity overloads and additional bureaucracy, accountability, and then including references to the Sammamish River in addition to Lake Washington. So at a high level, the survey feedback we received, several respondents wanted to know how success will be measured. Some wanted more emphasis on local food production, gardens, things like that. Some wanted a greater emphasis on climate change impacts to Sammamish River water quality. And then some folks wanted to increase the city's landscaping standards. And finally, some wanted to support additional opportunities to promote sequestration. We did receive 1 comment from a council member. So that comment was to add whether the strategies are also covered in the K4C commitments letter and list any commitments that are not covered by the CAP strategies. So we've made some recommendations. Hopefully everybody had a chance to look at the CAP. We wanted to propose the following changes to the CAP. So the first one being adding a new action in the municipal operations focus area. This is to create a new dedicated climate action or sustainability coordinator position. Looking ahead to implementation, we feel it's really important to have a dedicated lead on this. There's a lot of actions in the CAP. And so someone with good expertise in that realm and the ability to kind of keep things moving into the future through implementation is key there. Similarly, we recommend including measurable targets and metrics, specifically the ones through the K4C commitments in your implementation plan. We also recommend calling out, in addition to Lakes Washington, the Sammamish River, Swamp Creek, and salmon species in the local climate impact summary page. We recommend updating this action here in the natural systems section to include restoration and broadening this from Lake Washington to local waterways in order to include Sammamish River, Swamp Creek, and other critical waterways there. And then finally, just some cosmetic formatting adjustments, minor language revisions, and some additional details that we gleaned from public comment to add to the implementation considerations. So in a nutshell, these are the recommended changes we are proposing to the CAP. But we wanted to hold time to hear your questions, comments, anything on the plan, and then ultimately the changes you would need to see to approve this plan.
Can we take down the screen share, because it's easier for me to call on people if I can see them on screen. Questions, comments? Councilmember Marshall and then Councilmember Shrubnik.
Thank you. So one thing is a couple things very important to me is that if it's possible, if we could somehow imagine a land use or comprehensive plan element of the climate action plan, I think that it's safe to say that building and construction and destruction of the natural environment should have probably have a great impact on our climate and our ecosystem. I'd like to see some sort of elements that might impact preserving by lot the ecosystem or whatever natural elements remain, like tree canopy, open space, the critical areas, wetlands, and all the rest of that. And then also the second element I'm interested in is preventing the increase in impervious surfaces and surfaces that are going to be absorbing solar heat. I think I remember a bunch of articles in the Seattle Times last summer about how increasingly urban paved areas that have way more pavement than, say, like green space, got physically hotter and hotter. Temperatures were hotter and hotter there. And the Seattle Times articles I read talked about those populations being lower income in urban areas and people of color. And there's this impact that comes in that makes it even more oppressive in the heat when you have this massively paved over area. So I'd like to see anything that we could do to address that as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yeah, thanks for this work. Did I miss it? So the presentation that you just made, the half dozen slides, I didn't see that in the agenda. So I don't know if that's an Anastasia question, but maybe we can just make sure to have that be a link. And then, so question, just want to make sure. So I think it was maybe 2 or 3 from the end. You had like, comment, add. So those are things you are recommending adding then? I just want to make sure I'm understanding that.
Yeah, so those were culminated in that final slide of kind of like, what do we do next? So yeah. Perfect.
And then last was just, what would you think about, one of our commenters tonight, had a provocative, well, many of them had provocative requests, but one in particular, hit home with me, which is, can we be more aggressive with the timelines? And I was curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would say this is the city's first climate action plan. It's the first time you've completed an inventory or started thinking about some of these things. I think some of the key plans that you would need to have in place to hit the ground running aren't necessarily totally there yet. So like a transportation master plan, an EV plan, things like that. I think you would want to put a little bit more time and work into those things to see how feasible a more aggressive target would be. It feels like right now you guys are basically starting almost at point 0 and you want to get to a very aggressive goal in 10 years. So I would stay very focused on your ability to reach that goal for the time being. I think your membership in K4C does allow you to put forward more synergies than you would on your own, but I would just balance the trade-off of making a commitment to the community if you feel that you can't reach that commitment, if it becomes more of an aspirational target than a realistic target. So I would just kind of weigh the benefits of how you want to message that to your community if you did choose to adopt a more aggressive target. Some folks choose to do that. It's not impossible, but you would just need to consider rapidly increasing your investments and your capacity to implement these actions in the next
I'd be curious
5 years.
Council members saying. The last comment is, I'm personally a little uncomfortable with having the recommendation for staffing come from the consultants. I mean, I guess we've historically kind of left the how-to at that level to come from city manager. So that's a piece that I guess I would personally rather not have in this framework, and that, that internally they make a decision of how to actually do the work. Thanks.
Questions, comments? I am not seeing any more. Deputy Mayor.
I was just going to be very brief. I'm really thankful for the work that's come forward on this. I would agree, or what I'd like to, the context or the language I'd like to say is, I hope that as the city, we pursue the climate action plan aggressively, regardless of the targets, and do everything that we can to tackle what we can substantially here. So I'm excited about where we're at. I know we're just getting started, but it's a good beginning. And our community is going to come forward. Our staff has come forward. This council has put their voices forward, and I'm really excited about the product that you've come together with so far. So I just want to thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah, I want to thank all of you for all of the work that's gone into this. I know that it was just untold hours have gone into all the outreach and the work on the various iterations and bringing it to this point. So thank you so much for your work. You know, like the Deputy Mayor said, we have a lot of work to do here, but this gives us a really nice roadmap for moving forward on addressing climate in a meaningful way. So thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing it again on, what date was that, Richard?
May 16th.
May 16th.
Yes.
Great.
All right. Well, we'll incorporate these comments and create a matrix similar to other drafts that we put together and lay everything out for you for the final approval.
Councilmember Baker?
Yeah, I just wanted to add my thanks and congratulations on the work that's been done. It's been outstanding, and you guys have done a really good job. So thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Next on the agenda, staff report. First item, community engagement tool, Bang the Table, presented by communications specialist Lauren Sholmiak.
Lauren Homiak.
Homiak, thank you.
Silent C. Yeah, she'll be here in a moment.
And Mayor Herbig.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me tonight. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Yes, we can hear you.
Great. All right, let me share my screen here. All right, hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Lauren Homiak. I am the communications specialist for the city of Kenmore. And tonight I'm here to briefly present to you about a pilot project proposal that we're hoping to move forward with through the Bang the Table Engagement HQ online engagement platform. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about it tonight. Bang the Table is an online community engagement platform that provides opportunities for the community to learn about city projects and initiatives and contribute to conversations and decisions that are being made. It's different than a traditional website. Our traditional website, I kind of think of it as a one-way communication where we're telling community members what's happening. This would be more of a two-way conversation that's happening with a whole bunch of tools to inform the public and also gather feedback in a more streamlined way than we're currently doing. It's a shared community space, so it kind of lifts the veil of a government website and instead is a feeling of a community commons where conversations can happen. And because there's a more diverse range of tools, we can really engage at different members of our community, and it really promotes inclusiveness in a new way. Some of the tools that—
Hold on, Lauren, this is Anastasia. Sorry to interrupt you. I don't know if you're meaning to share your presentation, but we don't see the slides from the beginning.
Oh, okay. Let me escape. Can you see them now?
We can, but you still might want to click from beginning in the corner there.
Yep.
It looks like it's lagging just a little bit. We don't see the presentation view.
Yeah, that's what's happening when I'm doing the play from beginning. Is it okay to just go in this view? And...
Yeah, we can see.
Okay.
Okay.
We can see things.
Great, thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So the main tools that we don't currently have using our city website that Engagement HQ would allow us to have are online forums. So online open houses where you think of projects like the Climate Action Plan. Right now, we're sending people to a different website to ask for surveys or open houses. This would bring it to a platform that we have control over. Virtual post-it notes and comments, interactive maps. So if someone's, if we're asking about ADA accessibility, they can drop a pin and show us where there's a sidewalk that needs some attention. Surveys and quick polls as a way to gather feedback from people visiting the site. And then, like I said, that two-way conversation with Q&A with staff, project managers or consultants, so that community members can be asking questions, receiving responses quickly, and the community can see that conversation in real time. One of the other great features is that Engagement HQ offers 24/7 moderation of the site. So it filters for spam or high risk language. We do not need staff available to do that. And then it also gives us advanced reporting and analytics so that we can analyze the type of feedback we're getting and hopefully make decisions about these projects in an even faster manner. So how will we use Engagement HQ in Kenmore? We are proposing a pilot single project annual license. So what that is one project page to begin with to test out, engage the effectiveness of this tool. The project that we are proposing to use is the comprehensive plan, and we would begin with the transportation element of the plan, where there's some pretty intensive outreach beginning as soon as next month in May. So we'd be looking to get this page up and running pretty quickly. The goal of using this tool would be to increase our outreach and community feedback and engage new populations in Kenmore. And like I said, test out having a platform that we have some control over instead of consultants using different platforms for this type of engagement. At the end of this period that we would try out the product, we would review its effectiveness and take into consideration using this tool in the future for multiple projects and initiatives, and as kind of a one-stop shop where community members could go and give all their feedback in one place for multiple projects. A couple other local jurisdictions that use Engagement HQ are Mercer Island. They call it Let's Talk Mercer Island, or Engaging Bellevue. And they're both great examples of cities that are using it for multiple projects. Whereas the city of Salem, Oregon, I put that on here because they have done a great job with a single project license using it for their climate action plan. So the links to those city sites are in the agenda bill if you want to take a look and see how other cities are using this tool. The cost of the tool for a single project license is $4,000 annually, and then there's a $2,500 onboarding and training cost. And this item was not specifically budgeted for, so it would require funds from the general fund. A few other considerations that I just want to put out there with this tool is it is a Granicus product. Granicus is the company that hosts our current website and our email listserv. So it is a tool that integrates well into the products that we already use for our communications. And then, like I said earlier, there is an option to upgrade to a full unlimited project license if we find that this is a useful tool. I personally am just really excited to have some new tools to engage with the community and to try and not control the conversation, but bring some of the conversation that happens on social media that the city is a little bit out of touch with into one space where we can see the conversations and reply and make sure that the information, the accurate information that we want to get out there gets out there to the public. So that is it for tonight. I just wanted to open it up if there's any questions about this platform. A formal vote isn't required because the expenditure is well within the city manager's authority. But just wanted to let you know about this tool, let you know I'm excited about it, and see if there's consensus among council to support moving forward with the single project pilot license.
Could we take down the screen share?
Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Shrebnick.
Sorry, I seem to be full of something tonight. Thanks, Lauren. I feel like I've missed the first slide. The first slide would, to me, have been, what's the problem we're trying to solve?
Yes.
So can you say a little bit about that? Because without that, I feel like it's a solution waiting for the problem. So.
Yes. So I think, you know, a small piece of it, like I said, is that there are all these conversations that are happening on Kenmore Neighbors or social media where we don't have a place to have conversation that's open to the public with staff. But I think one of the main things, and like I said, this is a pilot of a single project, but the initial problem that I've been trying to solve is that we are asking a lot of our public when it comes to giving us feedback, and we are sending them to a million different websites to use a million different tools. And then we're using different consultants, just like Climate Action Plan. They've done an amazing job on their community engagement, I will say. But you know, our efforts are being stretched really thin on all these different platforms. And I would love to see Kenmore have one place that the community can go, and it says, these are the projects that are happening, the initiatives we're excited about, and we would like your feedback on this survey, here's this forum. Because right now we're asking so much, but really not giving a streamlined opportunity for feedback. And the other thing, which was on my first slide, is that our current website is really a flat informational website of just saying what's going to happen, instead of really engaging the public and saying, we want to hear from you, we want to have a conversation, and we want to be transparent about this project or initiative. So I would like all of our outreach to be more effective and reach more people. And I think that this tool could do that for us.
Okay. I mean, I'm just struck every time we do outreach, how remarkably successful we have been. And that's why I was like, well, are we actually having a problem? I mean, this is a small investment. You didn't quite say how much is the full investment if we get the full license, but I guess my other concern would be, you know, you have a product like this, you have one person that knows how to, you know, use it, and then that person moves on, or, you know, I mean, I've seen that kind of issue as well. So would just want to have some redundancy if we do go in this direction, and specialized tools need specialized training, and, you know, there's more costs than just the license.
Yes.
So, yeah.
To answer your question, the unlimited license is $15,000 a year. You know, I think as far as one good thing about this, that again, our website doesn't do, is consultants would have access to use it. So like the Climate Action Plan, if we hire a consultant, they would have the ability to go in and use the tool and do the work. So it wouldn't require extra staff. I also think that there's certain projects like, and I'm using Climate Action Plan since they just were presenting, but that have the budget for a consultant, and then their outreach is really successful. And we have other projects that don't have a consultant or that extra support and outreach. And it'd be great to have an internal tool that we could use for those projects that don't have that extra support. So again, I think that that's why we want to try this one. And I think our outreach could always be better, but I think that there's kind of a big influx. Some projects, you know, get a really big response, and then some, you know, we'd like to have additional outreach and feedback.
Thanks.
Any other comments, questions? I'm not seeing any hands coming up. Appreciate the presentation. I think we look forward to seeing how this pilot goes.
Great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, Sammamish River Bridge, Juanita Drive, and 68th Avenue construction project updates presented by City Engineer John Vicente.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Just want to give you a brief update on the status of our 3 big transportation projects going on right now: the Juanita Ped Bike Project, the West Sammamish River Bridge Project, and the 68th Avenue Ped Bike Project. So a few things that these projects have occurred that were mostly unpredictable. You've all heard of the pandemic. That has created a few little hiccups with our 3 projects. We've also run into issues regarding utilities, and we've run into issues regarding the concrete strike. So with the pandemic, of course, the bridge project you're aware of went ahead before the pandemic, and during the course of the project, we ran into certain issues that we were able to compensate for by making shifts in how the project was going to be constructed. And so we're not seeing any schedule or financial impacts to the bridge because of the pandemic. However, the concrete strike has resulted in some long-term delays. If you haven't noticed, there's been not a whole lot of activity going out on the site other than the recent paving and some landscaping. There's along the plywood supply property, we're supposed to be building sidewalk, but before we can do that, we have to build a wall. Well, right when we got ready to do that, that's when the concrete strike was in its full swing and we were unable to get concrete. And so we've seen a delay in progress on this project. I'll backtrack. With the concrete strike started in December, and as of Friday, we got notice that the Teamsters Union has agreed to go back to work. They're still negotiating their contract, but they have agreed to begin work. So right now, our next step is trying to figure out when we get into the queue to get our concrete. There's a huge backlog. Almost every government agency that had construction has been waiting for concrete since pretty much the strike started. Most of the private development, they've been getting their concrete through private trucks and getting deliveries and getting what they need to take care of. So the concrete plants have been fairly busy. They haven't been shut down. So it's really more the government work that has been lagged. And so it's things like Sound Transit, they've got their 3 big projects going on and they're waiting for concrete. So we're somewhere in the queue, not too sure where we're going to wind up. So we're kind of waiting to see what happens with that. And again, the strike is not over. The Teamsters could decide in 2 weeks that they're getting nowhere and they're just going to go back to the picket line. So we're kind of hesitant to say that things are going to get up and running just because the strike is technically not over. They've just agreed to go back to work. So the bridge has been impacted by that time-wise. We believe we have enough time in the contract to complete without any additional days, which means no additional cost. But again, we had back in that August period in 2020, we said that we would possibly be able to get done early with this new plan. Well, we've lost a lot of that lead time that we thought we were going to get by accelerating the work to move the traffic to the old bridge and try and get everything delivered and before the fish window. Unfortunately, we've lost that time because of the strike. Contractors still wanting to get done by May or by June, but again, it's availability of concrete. So that's with the bridge. With the Juanita project, we've had issues, of course, with the pandemic, getting materials. We've had issues with the strike, being able to get concrete. We've had issues with utilities not being relocated when we asked them to, and so that's created other delays. And then we've been having some production issues with the contractor itself. All of that has accumulated into about $1.2 million in overruns on the project budget, and it's also added several weeks to the contract time. We are looking at getting reimbursed by the utilities for a chunk of that, but because of the strike, we are responsible for our own cost and the contractor is responsible for their own cost as it relates to the strike. The way the specifications are written is that each party is responsible for their own financial impact due to forces outside of both parties' control. And the strike is specifically identified as one of those occurrences that the contractor isn't responsible for financially, and we're not responsible for their financial impacts. So we're looking at an increase in costs for our construction management, our inspectors, because we have to keep them on board to continuously monitor the work. Even though it's moving slowly, they still have to be on site. So the 4 or 5 months of strike time equates to almost $500,000 in cost for that team, along with some other costs that we're seeing for other issues related to utilities. The hope is that the project will be done by early fall, late summer. Right now, we're in negotiations with the contractor trying to get a firm date for completion. Their contract days run out, I believe, in July, based off of their performance and what's left to be done. We're estimating somewhere around the early fall that they'll be actually finished. And then the 68th Ped Bike project has virtually gone pretty much unscathed by the pandemic and the concrete strike. They actually were able to get their concrete through Snohomish County, so they've been continuously keeping up with their work. But they've experienced utility delays and issues, which resulted in, which we've mentioned to you early on, about having to extend the closure of 68th and widen the area of the closure and having a larger detour. That's how we compensated for time and money for that. But that project looks like it's going to be done ahead of schedule, hopefully. We are looking at some overruns in terms of cost, but they're all related to the utilities, and we're looking at getting reimbursed for most of that cost as it relates to the contract. We're still going to be under budget even with that in mind, but we're still looking at change orders with that project. So that's kind of a rough update. Not going the way we planned it, but I don't think I've ever had a construction project go the way I've ever planned it. So just haven't run into these multitude of issues on top of each other, which has been frustrating, where we want these projects done as much as I'm sure everybody else does. But if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Councilmember Baker?
Yeah, just as a side note, Sound Transit's need for concrete would have a line of concrete trucks 27 miles long right now. So there's a big need there. I want to compliment you on the work on the bridge. The landscaping that really, really looks nice. They're doing a great job. So thank you for that, Mr. Vincenti.
Yeah, landscaping always makes me nervous because you just don't know what you're going to get until it's delivered on site.
Any other questions? Councilmember Marshall.
You're wearing definitely a lot of hats and possibly the Superman cape. Is there any way that we can help you advocate to get higher in the queue for that concrete? I mean, I don't think I think we're in the right to say that Kenmore, is significant, and certainly even our bridge project with people passing through down Simons, commuting from other cities, it is a regional concern. Is there anything else we can do to help you advocate?
I mean, that's a tough one because we're not the only ones that have this situation. There's so many folks out there that have the exact same argument. And if we were constructing the bridge, we definitely would have an issue. But right now, our problem is just finishing the project. We've got our lanes, we just don't have a sidewalk, and so does that really garnish an urgent need? It depends on everybody else out there that needs concrete. What is their need? Now with the bridge, we have an advocate. Our contractor, Secanti, they want to get done. Their concrete person, their driller is what they're waiting for next, is a subcontractor. And so they're going to be pushing hard on that sub to get out there because Secanti's got other work they need to do, and they don't need to be sitting on a project waiting for somebody else to finish the work. So they're going to be our strongest advocate because they want it out there the first part of May. Well, that's not going to happen. So they're going to be pushing hard because every day they're there is money they lose. So they're going to be our biggest advocate. With 68th, there's no issues, of course. Juanita, that's an ongoing discussion, and we need to have a sit down with the contractor to strategize how this project's going to get completed, given what's happened to date and with the strike being over. So that's a different issue, really.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm not seeing any.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next up, in-person council meeting update presented by City Clerk Anastasia Warhol.
Thank you, Mayor Herbig. We want to give you a brief update as we prepare for hybrid meetings. Before I do that, I'm hoping that our attorney can come on for just a moment to give us a brief reminder of where we live in terms of OPMA and current pandemic requirements.
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Of course.
Great, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you, City Clerk Warhol, Mr. Mayor and Council. I just have a very quick update for you. As of today, the city is still working under the Governor's Emergency Proclamation 2028-14, which essentially requires exactly what we've been doing for over 2 years, which is to hold public meetings remotely with a minimum of telephonic access and options, of course, for other electronic access. The exception, as I think you'll hear more about in a few minutes, the exception is the council can opt to include an in-person component, but it has to also continue the remote option under the emergency proclamation. And really, essentially, that in-person component needs to allow the citizens or those persons attending in person to hear a speaker, all of the speakers, simultaneously. So one is being said, and that creates, the technical operations that I believe the city clerk will speak more to. That's where we are. It's the same as where we've been. It will go away once the governor either rescinds that proclamation or declares the emergency the public health emergency to be ended. So any questions? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Don. And before I give my update, I'm just going to scan the room really quickly to see if Jennifer Gordon was with us, but there might be a technical glitch and she's not with us anymore. In any case, as you know, the last time we talked, we shared with you that we were moving in the direction to add enhancements to our council chambers to make it hybrid friendly. And we're working with the same vendor that did the initial upgrade. The name is Diversified. And we thought that we had a running start when we talked to you last time until 2 weeks ago, we got an unfortunate email from them saying that there's a specific part that they've ordered that has no replacement that is scheduled for shipping earliest in June. So where does that leave us? I mean, I think it leaves us in the potpourri of everybody that's dealing with supply chain issues and the demand still exists. So what we've done is we've really kind of pushed back. We've asked them to look for alternatives, talk to their engineering development team, see if anything can be done, because we'd like to get those council chambers ready for us to integrate into them as quickly as possible. What does this mean for a project timeline? As it stands, it means that it's been protracted and by a few months, right? So if the parts don't get in until June, if the installation doesn't happen until later, I'm not quite sure when we can safely say that the council chambers are professionally hybrid ready. So my recommendation, and this is something I brainstormed with Dawn and with Jennifer Gordon, our recommendation is to stay the course, work with our vendor to try to move on that trajectory as quickly as possible. Oh, I see Jennifer pause. I'm going to go ahead and add her to our group of people. And in the meantime, what we'd like to do is schedule some mock meetings in the chambers as they are to see what that would look and feel like without the enhancements in place. Now, my fear is that because we are responsible for offering a primary virtual option that's professional where people can hear one another, if we move to a primitive hybrid mode before the enhancements are in place, we do run the risk of pretty significant disruptions. One scenario that we see play out kind of frequently is, for example, the city of Linwood. If people can't connect into the Zoom portal, if they can't hear the council or the council can't hear them, you actually have to adjourn the meeting. If you can't troubleshoot and fix the problem, you have to actually move on to a next meeting and move those items to when you can troubleshoot your virtual component issues. So we want to avoid that. We want to give the council and the community a very professional product. We want everyone to be seen and heard, but we want to explore what we can do in the interim if, frankly, June, July is too long to wait. So that's where we are today.
Okay. Any questions, comments, thoughts? At this point, it's looking like we come back to in person at after August recess at this rate.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Now I will say that we are testing. So we're going to do what I'm calling primitive hybrid. We're going to try that. It's on the calendar to do that, not this week, but the following week. And I know that we did intentionally invite the mayor and the deputy mayor to participate. And what we'd like to do is give the council sort of a full briefing of what that experience might feel like for the user on the virtual side and the in-person side. And if it's sufficient, and if based on your experience, you're thinking it's okay, we can weather it this way until the enhancements are in place, we might want to move in that direction. But I can't confidently say that it will meet your needs and frankly, meet the needs of the community.
Deputy Mayor and then Councilmember Baker.
I'm raising my hand on behalf of Councilmember File.
Oh, okay. How do we can't unmute her. Madam Clerk, do you know the code that she would have to punch in on her phone to unmute?
I'm unmuted now. Thank you.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you, Anastasia, for doing all this hard work and investigation on this. And I really appreciate your efforts. What I'm looking at is really the possibility of us continuing to do the investigation on the work, on trying to get as much done as possible and ready the space. But I'd hate to rush into the space and have things go awry and go wrong. In looking at surrounding cities, I noticed that Bothell is waiting until May, later May to do a trial start. I know Kirkland is considering some other options. I'm fine kind of staying the course and waiting until we have the proper equipment to serve both our community and ensure our public can attend virtually and hear as well as be in the space.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes, I think we should wait and do this right. I would hate to have things go awry if we try to rush it. So I'm certainly in favor of staying the course until we get the equipment in place.
Any other comments? I agree with Councilmembers File and Baker on this one too. I think we need to do this right. So it's unfortunate that apparently one part is holding all of this up. But I think that, for the public's sake and for our sake, we need to do this the correct way. I will try my best to make myself available to partake in your dry runs on these. We'll have to see how those work out with my schedule, but I will do my best to participate in those. Let me know if there's other ways that we can help out in the testing. Deputy Mayor?
I just had a thought run by me, and I'm comfortable with waiting and staying the course. But one idea that did just pop up for consideration, if we were to, as a council, use the chambers and log in through Zoom in the chambers and still have a Zoom meeting, so we'd be in one location, would there be any benefit to that?
Well, part of the as it stands, there would be a concurrent Zoom meeting at the same time as there is a physical space, right? A physical meeting. So you'd have to be able to accommodate all of the physical visitors, and you'd have to be able to accommodate all of the virtual visitors. So if you're relying solely on using the Zoom meeting in the physical space, that doesn't quite work, because you can use a Zoom meeting as an observer, but you're reliant on the physical equipment for people to be able to virtually hear you within the council chamber space. It's a little bit technical, and I'm not an IT person, but that's part of the reason why we're trying to get this optimized so that there's equal bandwidth given to council members in person and out of person, and that people can see the spectrum of the council dais along with the virtual council members presented or presenting. And the same is true for staff presenters, whether they're in person or not in person.
Okay. I guess my follow-up question is, if we perchance wanted to be in council to use our laptops that we're currently using for meetings, could we? It's just a question. It's a semantic thing. I can use my laptop here and be in a Zoom meeting, or I could use it in the council chambers. Is it that the bandwidth, the technical bandwidth that's there isn't sufficient to have a few people in the same space? I'll let it go. I wanted to ask the question because it ran through my mind, because I think we as council members have interest in being in the same space together at some point soon. But I definitely agree that we want to have the best technical ability. I was actually considering it a Zoom meeting, but being in a shared location. And that just doesn't, anyway, I just thought I'd put it out there for consideration, and we can talk offline about it, possibly.
Okay, I think
the benefit of being in one space. Okay, for us as council members, to have a time where we're physically in proximity to each other, but it's a Zoom meeting. But I guess that's not logical, is what I'm catching. So I'm okay. I just wanted to put it out there. It was a free form thought that I just wanted to consider verbally with everyone. So that's good.
Councilmember Marshall?
Yeah, no, I totally appreciate Deputy Mayor's thought. I mean, that was my thought. Why can't we just have a Zoom meeting in the council chambers? But we're told by the city clerk, and who definitely knows way more than I do about technical issues, some scenario might come up where it messes the whole thing up and we'd have to delay to the next meeting, which we don't want. It might be where maybe it's somebody is trying to speak at the dais and then we can't get it come through to the Zoom, or vice versa. And then maybe we're putting a laptop up to a microphone and winging it like that. I mean, you can work out stuff like that, but it could also screw it up.
Yeah, Deputy Mayor and Councilmember Marshall, it's an interesting thing. If you choose to be in the council chambers, you have to be reliant on the physical components of the physical space in order for those to be integrated properly for the virtual user, right? And so that means you have to be using the microphones when there's public comments that are coming up to the dais or podium and they're giving public comment. They have to use the physical microphone so that virtual participants can hear them on the other end. And sure, you can bring your laptops, right? But then think about feedback. You have to completely mute your entire setup. So if part of it is to be sort of in the same space together, I don't know. I mean, one option is to, for the first time, try what I would call maybe a low maintenance meeting where it's a study session and it doesn't have a whole lot of moving parts and you guys get to conglomerate sort of in a physical space. And there's a public component. Maybe we just integrate a virtual public comment component and we test to make sure that you're heard and everyone on the other end is heard. And that's sort of a soft entry into the whole hybrid world, right? But yeah, if you choose to go back in person, for the benefit of the virtual user, you need to be able to use the functioning audio system and the camera that's affixed to the wall properly. Otherwise, we are going to shortchange the virtual visitor.
Councilor Marshall.
And maybe I already said this, but yeah, maybe we could experiment with it and see if that could be done. Clunky as it is, give it a shot and see how good or bad that situation is, kind of winging it.
I know in my day job, we have people both in the office and virtually. And I know that there are times where people will be in a Zoom meeting and I'll have a coworker over here on it and a coworker down the hallway that on it there. And I won't be in the meeting, but I'll be hearing, an echo and, like there are barriers, I think, to doing this right. Deputy Mayor?
Just two things. I think I understand with the echo and the sound quality, that makes a lot of sense and the complexity there. I was picturing public comment only being via Zoom so that we would all just be on Zoom as our mayor just described. So thank you for clarifying that. Councilmember File has a question.
Thank you. And this is a question really for our attorney. I feel that there is also a component we're not really addressing, which is if we have our council in the space to attend a meeting via Zoom, but in the council chambers, I don't believe we are allowed to bar the public from attending a publicly recognized meeting, even if we were attending via Zoom in the chambers. It puts for a funky wicket. And I think that becomes yet a different kind of problem.
I think I understand. Yeah, I will confirm. So if the council determines to have an in-person component, the hybrid meeting, it must allow the public to also attend in that same physical in-person space.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think what I'm gathering is that you would like us to stay the course, work with our vendor, do everything within our power to see if that timeline can be sped up at all, if there are alternatives that we can explore on the parts and the equipment that we need. And in the meantime, we will at the staff level try sort of a mock hybrid primitive thing to see if it works and if we can get it to work. And if we'll come back, we'll give you a report on that. Hopefully one or two of you will have intimate knowledge of that because you'll be involved. And maybe we'll proceed forward.
That's what I'm hearing also.
Okay.
Appreciate
Anything
the work
else,
you're putting
Ronnie?
into this.
Oh, one other thing, it's not on the agenda, but I did want to give the council a little bit of peace of mind. I know that today you reaffirmed or reapproved a resolution as part of your consent calendar. I wanted to let you know that the publication of that is already scheduled for tomorrow. And so that will effectively start sort of the 90-day clock. And hopefully you will see an ordinance on referenda and initiatives in July, maybe July 11th or the following meeting.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, council member reports and comments. I want to start off with a quick discussion around retreat facilitation services. Council requested that we put out, that staff put out a request for proposals for retreat facilitation. Our retreat is coming up on June 3rd and 4th. We received 3 responsive bids from what I can tell. And I wanted to get a sense from the council on how we wanted to proceed with that. You have all received copies of the proposals. We have a couple different options. We could make a decision tonight. We could form some sort of subcommittee if we wanted to evaluate the proposals and interview folks and bring back a recommendation to council, or something else. But those are the 2 that seem most obvious to me. I wanted to see if people had strong feelings around how we wanted to approach the retreat facilitator RFP. It's past 10 o'clock and everybody's turned into pumpkins. Okay. Councilmember Shrevenick?
Well, that's what I was going to say, actually, as it seems kind of late to be doing option A, which I think was deciding tonight, because I think we might want a rich discussion, whether it's a subcommittee or the full. And I also wanted to just underscore one piece, which, you know, while we might have input on this particular staffing position because this person will directly serve the council, we don't normally have and shouldn't normally have input on other staffing decisions. So this is not like this is setting a precedent for other staffing positions.
No, this is a contract and we approve all contracts that the city signs generally anyway. This isn't staff. It's a little different, but yeah, Ms. Lukash.
I did just want to point out there is an urgency around picking someone, because as you know, in advance of the retreat, we want this person to do interviews with all of you and help create an agenda, and that does take time. So I'm happy to help in any way I can. Just let me know.
Okay. Does anybody else have thoughts on how they'd like to proceed on this? Okay. Well, then I would like to propose a committee of myself. Is there anybody else that wants to jump in on this? Okay. Okay, I'm seeing 3 other people raising their hands. Deputy Mayor, is that a question or are you raising your hand? Okay. So I'm seeing Councilmember Shrevenick, I'm seeing Councilmember Baker, I'm seeing Deputy Mayor O'Kane. I would be happy to actually leave it to the 3 of you if you want to handle this process. We would probably need something back to council though in the next couple of weeks in order to move forward with June, because I think they'll need the month of May to do interviews. Is the council okay with the deputy mayor and council members Baker and Shrevenick doing some interviews and bringing us a recommendation? Okay, I'm not seeing any. I'm going to take that as consensus because I'm not seeing any objections. So
I don't know if Councilmember File wants to weigh in. I gave the thumbs up.
Oh,
Mayor?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm wondering if we might be able to expedite this since we are taking the committee approach to maybe, I would hope that we could get something going, hopefully bring something back in 2 weeks. Would that be unreasonable? And could we get that on the agenda?
I think that's probably doable.
We're not meeting in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about. Would next week be too fast?
It depends on, does it depend on what we're expected to do? I mean, if it's a document review, that seems, on meeting, that seems fine. If we have to, I heard somebody say we needed to interview all three.
Well, you can decide how you want to do it, I guess, is what I would say. Ms. Lukash, I believe we are meeting on the 25th. Or
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah, there
Okay.
is a meeting on the 25th, which is in 2 weeks. So that might work
Okay.
time-wise.
Deputy Mayor.
And I apologize for, extending this since we have to decide on the committee, but I think it would be great if we could do a document review, the three of us, and see where we're at. Are you looking for us to be a committee and proposing who we think we should select and move forward with? And if that's the case, hopefully we can move faster. If it's more extended, anyway,
I don't think we need to do like full council interviews or something. That seems kind of overkill for this. But because we did do an RFP, I think we do need to properly evaluate everything. Councilmember File, did you have something to add?
Yes. Yes, thank you. Exactly that. I think that it would be good to have both a meeting date cited and those interviews and the committee meeting occur via live Zoom and recorded for our public transparency. Otherwise, it's a committee meeting happening kind of behind the scenes. And I don't feel like we want to have that kind of a outlook.
I believe three of us can get together and have those discussions well within the OPMA. Does the city attorney have an opinion on that? Because that's just adding a whole other layer of complexity to what it needs to be a fairly quick decision.
Yes, as long as you're minus a quorum, three can, of course, discuss without triggering OPMA requirements.
Okay. Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yeah, one thing that I did request and haven't seen it yet, and this could go out to all council members, the original RFP, I don't know that we ever received that. And then two of the applicants referenced other materials that were not provided to us. One referenced a resume, the other was, I think, an approach statement, and they weren't part of the packet. So if everybody could at least receive all the information, and then that would help the subcommittee as well.
Yeah, Ms. Lukash.
I'll make sure you receive all the materials, the subcommittee.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Councilmember File has another question. Or raised
Okay. Councilmember File.
I have no other question. Thank you.
Okay. So it sounds like we know what we're doing here. Deputy Mayor, Councilmembers Baker and Shrubnik will endeavor to bring us a recommendation at our April 25th meeting. I really appreciate all of you stepping up. That's a huge help to the council.
Could we make sure that we know who's taking lead? I don't know, Deputy Mayor, are you kind of gonna ring lead us?
I'll ring lead. Okay. Yes, I'll get a date so that we can get together and talk about this. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Okay. And now let's go around the horn. I'm gonna go in the order that I see people. Councilmember Baker.
I want to bring forward a motion to discuss on the 28th, when we're looking at further tenant protection items, to consider exempting owners who have 4 units or less. And if anybody agrees with me, I'll take a second.
Yeah, I second that.
Councilmember
Point of
File,
order.
what is your point?
I believe the process to raise a topic is to raise a topic and then see if it has a second, and then have a discussion and a vote.
That is exactly what's happening right now. He raised a topic for discussion. Councilmember Marshall seconded. We'll now have a discussion and see if there's consensus to bring it on a future agenda.
No, on the 28th, I specified an agenda when we.
Which
discussed
28th? May 28th?
May 28th.
Okay. So we have a motion, a second. Does anybody want to, Councilmember Baker, do you want to start a discussion on this?
Well, we certainly can. I just think it's a good idea to look at having small owners exempt from this, because anybody who's renting a room in their house or an ADU would certainly like to know who they're renting to.
Councilmember Fowle, did you have something to say?
I do, thank you. According to the other cities that have taken the similar action, uniformity across the board is the best policy on this issue. And that's why small landlords were not exempted from the policy recommendation and not otherwise the practice elsewhere. I know that there are pathways to ensuring lease agreements have opportunities for additional rental insurance protection to, but that's between the landlord and the leasee. I believe our attorney did some really good, thorough research on this, as well as the experts we had with us. And I think if we stand aside of our work we've already done underway, we would undermine our work.
Okay.
So I would like to hear from our
Councilmember Marshall and then Deputy Mayor.
Yep, I trust that the council can remember my previous arguments on the matter, but I think that the couple people who spoke tonight were far more eloquent than me in pointing out the importance of having a balanced approach and not just thinking only about tenants in situations like this, or even thinking about how a imbalanced approach might result in corporatization of our housing and rental, driving small landlords out of Kenmore, so that we end up in the situation where you just have these big conglomerates owning everything, and that then being able to raise more of the rent and making it worse for tenants. But certainly, at least to be able to discuss this, I would humbly ask the council to at least be able to discuss this as Councilmember Baker has put forth. At least let's fully air it then, if we can. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, and as much as I'm proud of where we've gone with our tenant protections, I think that we did hear things today in public comment, along with Councilmember Marshall and Councilmembers Baker's comments last time we discussed that I think it's worth further discussion and giving consideration to. I don't know that it will change, but I did hear things tonight that gave me things I wanted to think about, and I appreciate Councilmember Baker bringing this forward.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yeah, I guess I do have a problem with bringing it forward, considering that we already had this exact same motion and we defeated it once. I'm not a big fan of revisiting things we already did, but if that's the will, then I'm not going to stand in the way of having more discussion about it. I mean, I've personally been a landlord of 2 different houses in 2 different jurisdictions, probably totaling about a decade. I've been a renter for a decade. I've been a homeowner for 30 years. If you're a homeowner and you're renting your house, you're fortunate to have the financial wherewithal to do that. And I think we have these tenant protections to protect the folks that have less means. But I'm happy to revisit the discussion again.
I think Councilmember Baker, did you have your hand up?
No,
okay.
It's been said.
Councilmember Fowle, did you have something to add?
I do. Thank you, Mayor. I believe that Councilmember Shrubnik said it very well. We did already address this issue, and it was voted down. And it's a little odd after the fact to bring it back forward. There have been concerns raised elsewhere when the same policy work was done in other surrounding cities, and it was a fear-based statement. Yet that's not the worry was not the outcome of the actuality. So that being said, I think we do have to go back to being careful about going backwards on our work, and also taking any action without our attorney looking at things first. If we go back and undo part of our work, then we could be making the actions we took weaker, and we could, harm the overall work we've already done. But that being said, this policy framework is really important, that it's unilaterally equal on this issue across the board. And there are options and opportunities for small landlords. We could possibly host a business meeting with the city and small landlords, and bring in some experts to show them how they can continue to operate efficiently without loss. I think that's one way to go. That's something that has happened elsewhere, but I would hate to go backwards on this at this time. I do hear the concerns. I do hear the worries. They have been stated elsewhere to other cities, and again, they never came out to fruition. So I'm staying with the best quality standard on this policy framework.
Okay, so what I'm seeing right now is I've heard 3 council members say definitively that they wanted to bring this back. Those would be council members Baker, Marshall, and the deputy mayor. I've heard Councilmember Shrubnik say that she might be okay with bringing it back. I have some of the same procedural heartache that Councilmember Shrubnik has. But I'm seeing 3 so far. Councilmember Shrubnik, is this something that you want us to have a conversation about next May?
I would strongly prefer not to, but
Okay, well, I'm trying to figure out if we, I'm trying to figure out if we have, because our procedures say, I was going through this again today. Yeah, the presiding officer will direct discussion on new topic and determine whether there's a majority support to move it to a future agenda. And I'm trying to figure out if there's majority support. I see 3 people so far. Deputy Mayor?
And I hear the procedural piece as well. And I know we've gone through things like this before. Where I was most interested is not at the level of 4 units, but really I'm most curious as our support for ADUs and hearing concerns from our community about the ADUs, like a single home with 1 unit. But personally, I can say my perspective on this, as much as I've heard concerns, I do feel that a lot of the issues may be fear-based. My sense is that people are selling their homes because they're making money. There's too much money to be made for people, and people can retire on what they're selling their homes for. Or there could be any number of things, but I recognize the concerns that have been brought forward, and I'm not going to I think there are some legitimate concerns, but my area where I was most curious wasn't at the level of 4, it's 1. And even then, I prefer a standard, and that's where I voted last time against expanding it. But I did hear our community, and I thought that their concerns were big enough that I supported talking about it. But at the same time, I mean, I'm a 3. I am 3rd because of that, but I am most interested in, you know, just giving consideration to something that we as a city have so supported, and hearing the voice of our community that had raised such concerns today. I heard that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And we don't need, I'm trying to figure out whether we have 4. I don't think we have full policy discussion tonight. Councilmember File, do you have something new to add or a question?
Well, I don't, like you, I didn't see that there are 4. I see that it looks like it's a very tight issue, and we could, I could recommend that we just table this discussion until our next meeting and carry it over then when we have a full council. But frankly, I have great alarm and concern that this issue was already addressed several times over and cited in our meeting minutes, and it's not a quality best policy example to just take a sidestep on this policy piece. So
I believe you've expressed that twice already, Councilmember File. I appreciate that. I'm not trying to cut you off, but it is 10:30, and I'm just trying to figure out if we have a majority to bring this back. That is my question. I see 3 so far. I don't see 4. And without 4, I don't see this coming back.
And I understand your position, but I will be bringing this back again next week and every other meeting from now on. City Attorney says I certainly can do that, and I plan on it. So thank you very much.
Madam City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to say, I do understand that you're looking to see if the majority, but I believe there is a motion on the table, and that would make it very clear.
Well, no, I mean, I guess in our procedures, it doesn't actually talk about voting on bringing something back. It talks about determining whether there's a majority. I guess a vote is one way to go about that. So fine. I mean, I guess, okay, a question for you procedurally then, a parliamentary question. If we were to have a vote on this, and then a council member were to bring it back at a future meeting, would that be out of order?
It would not. So there is the ability to reconsider something, and then there's the ability to do what's called renew an issue. So when you're in the same meeting, let's take today, if we are doing the tenant protections,
right,
and the same motion was raised and it was voted down during the same meeting, the only way a person could renew it would be a person from the majority. They would have to, right. But outside of that same meeting, a council person, and you guys do this legislatively all the time, you can raise policy issues up until the extent that a legal ramification occurs. For example, you approve a contract to be signed and it's signed. You can't then go back and change policy because you're contractually obliged now with a contract. So that, I believe that is a correct procedure, but it has to follow your rules.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, I guess I'm going to ask our city clerk then to take the roll on the motion to bring this to the May 28th meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Herbig. The motion as I have it is a motion to discuss on the May 20, is there even a May, hold on, is there a May 28th meeting? Let's verify.
No, May 28th is a Saturday.
Councilmember Baker, would you clarify that date, please? And you're muted.
It is the meeting where we are discussing.
If I may, I believe that's May 23rd.
May 23rd?
I believe it's May 23rd.
Okay, so Councilmember Baker, with that correction, I believe the motion is a motion to discuss on May 23rd when we are looking at further tenant protection items to consider exempting owners who have 4 units or less. This was seconded by Councilmember Marshall. Okay, on that motion, Deputy Mayor O'Kane,
Yes.
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Mayor Herbig,
No.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
No.
Councilmember File.
No.
The motion does not pass.
Do you have anything further to add, Councilmember Baker, for your report?
No, I will be bringing that back at our next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Marshall.
Yes, I want to have the city attorney supplement me if I don't have this right, but just for Mr. O'Brien, the MOU regarding the opiate settlement, we did not really sort of elucidate what that was.
That is correct. It is a memorandum of understanding, which identifies the framework for potential allocation of settlement funds should a settlement occur for the opioid litigation that is ongoing. That is correct. The hard copies have been forwarded to the city clerk, and those can be available also.
So we're joining in that without going it alone at vast expense.
Oh, that is correct. And thank you for that. Yes, City of Kenmore is one of 29 cities and counties, a coalition in this litigation. Thank you.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Sorry. Yeah. No meetings to report on. I did just want to express my support again for Camp Unity. When we first developed the permit a few years ago, when it was North Lake Lutheran, I had some concerns. Certainly we had some concerns from the community. But we were, I think pleasantly, not surprised, but we're pleasantly reassured about what a good neighbor they were during that temporary permit, which of course this is again a temporary 4-month permit. So I hope that my neighbors 2 blocks from me will be equally good neighbors, Camp Unity and the homeowners and renters that are in that area. So I just hope we can continue to have compassion for folks, knowing that this isn't a permanent solution.
Councilmember File.
Thank you. Not much to report. It's I'm excited. We're celebrating Earth Day, and during this wonderful month of April, it's a great time to talk about our environment and our climate, and also mention that the King County Hazardous Waste Committee has a brand new program for businesses. It's a opportunity to have free disposal up to 220 pounds of hazardous waste, and or request a voucher for $750 to remove waste. Business owners are responsible to haul the waste to the site where they are directed to, but it is a wonderful program. It definitely helps reduce some of the cost burden to small business owners. And there is a residential side of the program as well. So we'll be able to share that with our community going forward. So thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Nothing but to add, but thank you for everyone's time staying late today. It was a robust meeting. I thought we got through a lot. I think there's just a small thing. I wasn't going to say it, but I decided I do think occasionally it's okay to bring something back to discuss when it's sensitive, but I will share that I've been very proud of where we were on the tenant ordinance. So anyway, occasionally something sensitive and does merit further discussion. So thank you.
And I would like to echo what Councilmember Shrubnik said. I probably lived, in fact, I can say I live closer than anyone else on council to the previous 2 visits by Camp Unity East Side. You could literally throw a rock from my condo and, get pretty close to where they were. And I visited them both times they were here. And frankly, I think they're a model institution. When they were here last time, I honestly would have forgotten that they had located here, except that I got an email asking me to tour their facility. I was like, oh yeah, they are around the corner, aren't they? And I went and I toured them and they were great. And I do remember the first meeting that North Lake Lutheran had with neighbors who were very concerned about this camp coming in. And now many of those same neighbors, the second time they were here, were some of the folks volunteering and bringing meals, and they'd formed relationships, and they'd gotten to know their neighbors. And I hope that when Camp Unity comes to the new location, that the neighbors that we heard from today will take the time to get to know their neighbors a little bit while they're there, because I think they'll be pleasantly surprised. I remember our previous police chief seemed intent that there would be a massive increase in crime by locating that camp there. And after they were there, I asked him, can you show me any data? He could not show any data linking any increase in crime to the location of Camp Unity East Side in Kenmore. I feel fairly confident that will be what we see again this time. So anyway, I really hope people will give them a chance. They've been here twice. They've been great neighbors. I would encourage folks to take a tour if they can, get to know their neighbors. They'll be here for a little bit and then they'll move on to the next location. And like the deputy mayor said, I hope folks will also show some compassion. Other than that, I don't have anything else to add. Unless there is seeing nothing more to come before the council, the Kenmore City Council is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good night.